Spotlight with Shadow, a Canadian dad who's got his finger on the pulse of global entertainment and sports. Each episode features unfiltered conversations with everyday creatives, musicians, wrestlers, filmmakers, and more from every corner of the globe. No fluff, just raw, real stories. This is Spotlight with Shadow, presented by Off the Top Media.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Shadow. Welcome back to another episode of Spotlight with Shadow. Today I have a very special guest in-house. He is an illustrator, he is a designer, he is a tattoo artist. He is the Kyle Scarborough. How are you doing, my guy?
Pretty good. Evening time here, post-work, but feeling pretty good, man. Thank you.
Hey, I love having you here, and I look forward to this conversation. So I'm going to dive right into it. Where are you originally from? Like, you don't have to tell me the town, just the state's fine. And what drew your inspiration to be this creative man that you are today?
I'm born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. Lived there till I was about 12, and then my family, we moved out west of there along the main Missouri River and in a town called Washington. And been here pretty much my whole life. A few other times I've lived elsewhere, but Washington's been home now for 30 some odd years. And, you know, I was always illustrated growing up. I gravitated right to it. It was, if I can recollect, something my mom used to say was, you just had to give him some, drawing supplies, crayons and paper, whatnot, and he's fine. You know, that's when to shut up a kid. I see that a lot with even my daughter now too. She just spends so much free time just at the table with all of her art supplies. But apparently that was enough, and I just stuck with it. Beyond that, I would, I was massively like with cartoons and comics and whatnot, and I would just sit, and when this is TV, this is barely a time when you could record it on VHS tapes, much less have all your DVRs and streaming. So once it was on, it was on. When it was gone, it was gone. And then what do you do? So in order to relive that, to get to stay in that and experience that, I would just draw it. I would keep drawing those scenarios, or Ninja Turtles or whatever the cartoon was that I was a fan of. So it's always been there for whatever reason, and never gave up on it.
So what would you call, was your family like the American dream growing up? Like, what was like your family lifestyle growing up? What was little Kyle about?
Working class family for sure. My, we were, middle class. I don't know what you call that, but it's a working class family in North St. Louis. My father was a retired fireman for about 35 years, and when he was doing that, he was also carrying sometimes up to 2 other part-time jobs. So my mom was able to stay at home and raise us. I have 2 brothers. I'm the middle child, so we had the luxury of having a stay-at-home mom for a lot of our childhood, and Dad worked hard, so kind of that. In that way too, it was a pretty traditional upbringing as well. I benefited from having 2 parents together my whole life, and so in that regard, pretty fortunate. I had a pretty solid upbringing. We all have our struggles and whatnot growing up, but I mean, all things considered, I was safe and happy. So it was solid. It's a good, that's middle America, Midwest upbringing.
I've never been to the Midwest. I've never really been to America. So that's, I know the American dream. I'm Canadian, but I've heard the American dream. It's kind of repressed over and over again into our heads. Growing up, were you into sports and stuff like that? Like, I know that being a St. Louis kid, you probably were, I'm assuming, a hockey fan?
Well, as a kid, it was Cardinals, and still is. The Cardinals baseball is kind of like religion in most places. It's the big one. It's certainly and that's why I definitely grew up around. Mom was a big baseball fan. Anywhere she was that day in the house, she would take the television with her and just plug it in, because we're talking, banana ear antennas in the 80s. And so anywhere, so she was in the kitchen cooking dishes, what have you. If she was over here cleaning, she'd move that TV around. She was the next one. And I felt like a Cardinals game was always on. I was convinced as a kid that baseball games happened every single day. And they kind of do. The seasons are crazy long, but it showed. I just felt like I saw it all the time. Hockey became as far as the Blues go, but that became more of a personal interest once I switched schools. The elementary school that I went to as a kid was beginning to get a bit rough, and a new school had opened up somewhere nearby in the North County area of St. Louis, and for fifth and sixth grade. Mom sent me out there. New set of friends, and all these kids were huge into sports. All my buddies back in my previous were a little bit more like we into your comics, cartoons, kind of messing around. Wasn't a whole lot of athletics. I think we did the little league baseballs and tried all that, but I wouldn't call us the athlete kids by any stretch. So new school, new friends, that's what they were all into, and they loved hockey. So whatnot. So I got real. You might appreciate this actually. I tended to find friends in school by drawing. It was always both like an icebreaker and also a reason to get kids to like you. Like you go, oh, you get, and then So here I am in fifth grade or whatnot, and all these kids like hockey. So I started drawing. I thought goalkeepers look cool as hell with all the pads and the masks and whatnot. So I would draw that, and I would draw these people all the time. And one of the kids came up, and I can't remember if he asked me to draw this particular goalie or not, but no, that's what he did. He came up and he goes, "Hey, can you draw me one?" I said, "Sure." He said, "I want you to draw Patrick Waugh of the Canadians at the time." And I said, "Yeah, of course, love to, no problem at all. Huge hockey fan. I'm just getting into the sport just to accommodate my new set of friends. I have no idea who Patrick Waugh is at this point in time."
Legendary goalie.
My thing at the time was right, and I certainly know that now. And then I followed his career and he went to Colorado and all that. But at the time, fifth, I'm like 10 years old, and I drew him. And I had the Canadians jersey and whatnot. I made sure I did the details that he had on his mask at the time. And then I would always, when I illustrate, I'd write the athlete's name next. I drew a lot of football players constantly, all kinds of stuff. But I wrote Patrick Waugh, gave it to the kid in class, and he looked at it and kind of furrowed his brow a bit. And he goes, I don't think that's how you spell that. I don't have the internet to look the dude up. So I took it phonetically. So when he said Wah, I spelled his name W-A-H instead of R-O-Y. And I kind of outed myself a little bit that I actually didn't know who really the hell this was. But we had a laugh about it, and he was cool. And, yeah, I actually became all real close to those guys and got into sports there. But, yeah, baseball was a constant growing up as a kid. We had the Rams here in St. Louis for a short stretch. I guess when I was a baby, we had the Cardinals, the now Arizona Cardinals. Were St. Louis Cardinals, but they left when I was little. The Rams came in, that was fun for a minute, and then mostly I was like a soccer fan, so part of a group. The main, if you turn on, watch St. Louis City and MLS now, the main supporter stand is the St. Louligans, and I very proud to say call myself a bit of a founding member of that. It was a small group of people that had our own little groups that we'd come to the matches with. This is pre St. Louis City and MLS. This is your, PDL feeder systems, your college kids. This is upstart people trying to start sub, USL level leagues and whatnot, if you know much about the soccer net. But so we were a part of that and saw the build up to it. The irony now is that now we have MLS in St. Louis, and I don't go. I focus on work and family. But yeah, so sports have always been there, even though it's kind of been found a balance with also being that sort of art kid and kind of being into things that are a little bit more on the nerdy side of stuff. So made it work.
One of the members of the 2019 Stanley Cup champions, Ryan O'Reilly of the St. Louis Blues at the time. Yeah. He's from down the road from where I live.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I went to his cup parade, and my daughter was only a few weeks old at the time. And he had asked me if she could sit in the cup. I never asked these things because I know how sacred that is. Right, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I've been a fan of Ryan since. I went to it because it was a community event, right? I don't really cheer for him, but after that moment, I became a fan of his.
Yeah.
I've seen just recently you actually just did a tattoo of Jordan Binghamton.
Yeah.
That was cool.
That was kind of fun, man. That was I haven't, because I'm pretty sure that would have been my first ever tattoo. So kind of like the story I just told kind of plays out, because I mean, it's always for me, just when I get to tattoo something for the first time, and those first times do happen even after I've been doing this now for 16 years. It's always fun to do something again. So, I haven't drawn a mask and whatnot since I was a kid, but then I get to tattoo one and try to do a portrait of one and whatnot. But yeah, the client who got that, actually, when I was apprenticing and going through all that, that's when I met him. I kept an overnight job while I apprenticed full time during the day, overnight job at night, barely got any sleep in the morning, and I just did that every day. And I knew him from that. So it's kind of neat too, to kind of see someone who was there watching you kind of grind it out to get to where you always stayed in touch thanks to the world of social media and whatnot. But he's a massive blues fan, and he's got a lot of I know you could do this. You can go down to the stadiums apparently and just like buy out old equipment that the players, and then you got to bid on it and stuff. I didn't know that was the thing. And he's got like Vinny's glove, and he's got this player's this and that and the other. So yeah, he's a huge fan, and that was a lot of fun. That was my first hockey portrait.
Kind of brings it a full circle moment, if you will,
A little bit, yeah.
Jordan actually played where I currently live, just up the road, for the Owen Sound Attack in his junior career.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of cool to see that. I'm not a fan of his by any means. I really don't like the guy, but that's not a here or there thing.
I have no dog in that fight.
So are you just a blues fan, or because you're a hockey fan too? Like you're a Cardinals fan for baseball, you're a hockey fan. Are you a blues fan, or are you?
I would say, I don't pretend to be something I'm not, so I won't try to sell you on the fact that I'm some super diehard. I think what's weird, and I don't know if this applies to most the cities. I think it's a matter of how the cities treat the sports that they have. I continue to be a fan, but I couldn't start rattling off stats. I couldn't really tell you all what I don't. It's like being from St. Louis, especially with the Cardinals, but yeah, with other sports teams as well. And, even the soccer, the St. Louis City, again, massive turnouts. I mean, the city supports its sports. And I think there's something about St. Louis was unique in that not maybe unique. Again, other cities no doubt do this as well, but we had that there. And so it was like part of you. It was just, you were like a Cardinals fan, whether you wanted to be or not kind of thing. That's what it felt like. So somebody asked you, like, are you a fan? It's like, yeah, I pay attention. I see what's going on. I know I know that the Cardinals right now are absolute dog shit. And so I know that it's been an atrocious season, and I know that, the manager and GM are staying, which is upsetting a lot of people. So, things, but I don't get, I don't sell myself as a diehard, but yeah, I mean, it's, I'll always care. It's like, I couldn't, that's just your team. It's just kind of like ingrained in you. So that's what it feels like.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I'm from Toronto. So, the Blue Jays, I'm not a fan of the Jays. I'm like you. I pay attention because they're the hometown team. I'm actually a Red Sox fan. So, and then like the Raptors, pay attention to them because of the hometown, but I'm a Celtics fan.
Yeah.
When it comes to hockey, I am the most hated fan as a Leaf fan. So,
how do you go all Boston until you get to hockey, and then you go Toronto? What that just
honestly, my dad, he was a big Boston guy except for hockey. He was actually a San Jose Sharks fan for hockey, but I kind of fell into that cycle like you. They're the home team, kind of followed them, and then I became a diehard fan of the Leafs. But like Boston for everything else, it seems, and just where I gravitated towards. So,
yeah.
All right. So I know you were telling me, we were talking back and forth texting. You had told me you're working on a project for some illustration for a video game coming up.
Mm-hmm. Well,
are you allowed to talk about that?
Tabletop, the RPG games, kind of like your Dungeons and Dragons kind of stuff. Not a video game, although that'd be cool. No, it's a company's called. No, it's all right. The company's called Monty Cook Games. Monty Cook, as I understand it, was contributed a lot early days. It was a big part of Dungeons and Dragons. I believe at either its inception or along the way. Again, I won't pretend to know. I'm sure people can fill that in better than I can. But the company produces the tabletop RPGs, but it's one of those sort of weird scenarios where how did I wind up in something in a medium like that I don't partake in? I've never played those games. I always thought they were cool. I was always interested, and I thought the kids who all got together and played that stuff, I'm like, that's pretty neat. Good for them. You're safely in your home on a weekend. These kids are doing it right. So I always liked it. I just never did it. In the friend groups that I had, by the time I was in high school and stuff, if it wasn't, sports and comic books, it was pro wrestling. Came back full circle from being a kid, so never had the friend groups with it. But the relationship and how that began, how I got even into that, was you can trace that all the way back to Windam as an example, and the Bray Wyatt. So that's kind of how that grew out of that. But it was really based initially off of a podcast called The Old Gods of Appalachia that started, I believe, around 2020 during the pandemic. Steve Shell and Cam Collins are the names, and Steve had just had the idea to kind of do this anthology type this story, and he would just narrate it. And he wrote this. So you're just listening to a guy tell a story, but it absolutely caught fire, and the popularity surged, and probably contributed by the fact that nobody had anything to do because everybody's stuck at home. It blew up, and then as a result of that, Monty Cook reached out and said, we'd like to make a game based on this story. And they fund a lot of their work with like your backer it, Kickstarter kind of stuff, and crowdfunding. And I think was trying to raise initially, they were shooting for $5,000, $50,000 was the goal. By the time it was all said and done, they had raised, and I don't remember the final number, but I believe it to be somewhere, it was at least $6 million, $8 million maybe. It was something fantastical number that the popularity of the game. And so thanks to that relationship with Old Gods, who not only was I a fan of this podcast, having came across them at the gym one night, turns out that Steve, the creator of the show, is also a massive wrestling fan and was a huge fan of House of Black and Malachi and all that stuff. And so turns out we were kind of fans of each other's things a bit. And then we chatted, and he's like, I'd like to maybe use some of your art and style. I think you kind of fit what we do. And that eventually evolved into working for the gaming company, who luckily also liked it. And I was able to, the first big book that they put out of the game, it's a lot of artists who do a lot of the interior design. The book's is full of artwork that pertains and whatnot. But up to that point, the show was just verbal. There was no, canonical imagery of the show. There was these descriptors, but there was no official, this is this character, this is this entity, so on and so forth. So the weight of that task was not lost on me. It was like, well, I am trying to respect. You got fans. There's a lot of people, obviously, who enjoy this show. They're going to want this to be right. So I was very mindful of that. I hope that I did well, but so the interiors, a lot of interior artwork for that based on the Old Gods, along with some others. And they also asked me to do the cover. So I got to do the cover art, which was, speaking of full circle moments, the dream as a kid would be comic book cover art. And it's still a dream, but it wasn't comic books, but I did a book cover. It wasn't, I wanted to go to school and do makeup design, and I had my eye on Tom Savini's school. Couldn't make it work. We didn't have the money for that kind of thing. Well, by 2018, whatever it was, my artwork is inside of Tom Savini's studio being turned into a mask. So, made it there kind of, it's just it's weird how those things sort of play out. But it's just been that. It's been a continuation of that snowball effect, essentially, with, wrestling led to this, led to that person, how I got to, Malachi Black, how that worked out was because of Windam. Windam's kind of the start. He really was, which is why I'm so appreciative and always want to sort of convey that I owe him a lot, and I'll always will, and I can no longer repay that back to him directly now. So that's that weighs on me, but I owe him everything. I owe him, he has that start got me there. It's your journey to keep going with it, but I had to make that work too, and I'm glad that people are highly receptive to it when they are, and it's exciting. But I owe him that. So yeah.
So I'm gonna ask one more question, and then we'll go into the Windam, how things, and Malachi and stuff. Because like I said prior to this, I'm here to experience who you are. Sure. Obviously, I found you through Windam, but I wanted to learn about you. But before we get into where Windam has led you, etc., what is the more upcoming projects that you are doing right now that you're a huge fan of the work you're doing?
Outside of tattooing is, people, some people have misunderstandings of even where my full-time duties lie. My full-time gig is tattooing. It
you own your shop now, or you work out of a studio?
Yeah, I started tattooing. I think I began my apprenticeship in the beginning. No, it's about 2005 is when I started the apprenticeship. I was licensed by 2007 and to here. So by 2013, I had with a partner at the time, we opened up my first studio, and we did it here in Washington, my hometown, and moved to a bigger, better location in 2016, which allowed some levels to the shop. And this new space came with a upstairs studio loft area, which I was more than happy to take as my own personal space. It's kind of perfect. And through no fault or no inaction or no bad relationship, the partner that we opened it with, we kind of decided he was a little burnt out on the business owner side of things. Employee headaches are always the biggest prevailing issue with shops, and I had zero interest in continuing to run a tattoo shop. I didn't run it like a conventional shop. That's a whole other story, but I ran it in a way that made sure that basically the employees were getting paid like they owned it. They were keeping about as much of their money as they could. I'm not patting myself on the back, or I'm not saying it's revolutionary. It's just my partner and I were pretty terrible at being bosses, and we were pretty bad at being money-making businessmen. He did it for his reasons that he did. He made his money, but I basically made my own. And so I thought, well, if we're not going to have the shop, there's no sense in me keeping this around. I'm basically holding on to responsibilities with no gain. So, but it worked out to where that studio loft is still my art studio, and fortunately, it's close to home and all that. And but tattooing has still always been the main breadwinner, so to speak. I've had moments where I could do a lot of other side projects, and I've done a lot of various things over the years for all different types of people and groups, organizations, or what have you. But it was by, certainly the biggest, most popular when I was taking on these others, because I didn't want to just be a tattoo artist, and not just to disrespect the profession, but it's hard. And I think you'll find plenty of tattooers who also are painters. Some of them so good that they're in galleries and museums. There are people who do other different mediums. And so similarly, the whole time as a kid, I always wanted, my goal as a kid was, well, I thought I would I'll draw comic books, I guess. When you're drawing and you got people in your ear growing up like, oh, you're going to go work for Disney one day. People just kind of say those arbitrary sort of things. But I think the reality started to hit by high school that you're not just going to somehow fall backwards into some great paying art gig. Reality started to set in that there's plenty of people out there who can draw. They'll never, if ever, make money off it, and damn sure won't be it'll be their career. That's a much smaller percentage of people, and whatever that medium might be. And so that reality started hitting me, and so that's why I didn't start tattooing until I was, I think it was about 20, all at 5, somewhere in there, which is kind of late in the game for most people. Most guys I know tattooing, guys and gals, they've been tattooing right out of high school, or pretty darn close. So felt a little late to it for that, but it was, even at that point in my life, I'm working all these jobs trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And I kept a .com running that I would take on commissions, and nothing massive ever came from that, but I was always trying to do something. It always felt like I was an illustrator. That's what I did as a kid. That's what I wanted to do. But what do you do with that kind of work besides comic books or something? Everything at that point was learning how to do all the online Photoshops and Quarks and illustrators and everything else, graphic design, marketing. That's hell on earth for me personally. I could never imagine doing that kind of stuff. That was never a goal I wanted to do. More power to you if you do it. But it was of no interest to me, and I had no idea how to make a living with my art. That was the decision. That's where tattooing came in. Tattooing was weird because I always loved tattoos, probably for the sort of wrong reasons. I mean, tattoos were indicative of the darker side of things. If you saw a guy with a tattoo, if you're growing up and you see the movies, the guys with tattoos were the villains. So the people with tattoos were the bikers and the outlaw types and all that. So like most kids, you see that, and the bad guys are cool. So I thought those guys were cool. If I saw some dude full of tattoos as a kid, I'm like, that guy's cool as hell. But I also probably thought he was an absolute convict. I also carried that unfortunate stereotype, was just part of the culture of things. So as a result, I never equated tattooing as an art form in that way, that this is just as fulfilling and impressive, and it can make just as beautiful of work on skin with needles as you could on a canvas. So once I realized that I went, I started being exposed to portrait artists, European artists who were doing things different than they were doing stateside. People that were doing, using just technique wise was it went against everything you learned here, the order of the so-called American or traditional way of learning things. And that was really, really exciting. And then I kind of started to realize that you could make a career out of it, and that's always been the case. So I'm glad that worked out. But similarly, I also, while being a full-time tattoo artist, was like still trying to figure out how do I fit in with illustration? How can I maybe do something with that? And which, when you have the full-time job and that's successful, this other stuff just feels fun. You don't feel stressed by it or obligated by it or anything. So it was easy to, and then to be so fortunate to find myself working in something that I loved as a kid, like pro wrestling, was just icing on the cake. That was, and you're getting paid for it. That how can you be mad about that? So just through a series of fortunate events and absolute dumb luck, I wound my way into the sites of the Not Yet Fiend character, but early days with Bray Wyatt and actually some other wrestlers too. And my first ever actual art job, as far as Major League Wrestling characters were be concerned, is actually Bullet Club. But that was a little bit more of a quieter, low-key thing, because it didn't really become anything massive or official there. But that was kind of neat. I mean, I could have done that as a fan and said that's all I ever did, and had my career, whatever it turns out to be, with tattooing, and live my life and been like, man, that one time I got to do something for the Bullet Club, and they were the hottest damn thing in wrestling in the late teens. Like, that's cool. That's exciting. I could have been feathering the cap with that and been happy with it, but it kept evolving from there too. So, yeah. And in that way, some days the illustration jobs can feel just as overwhelming as a tattoo job. So, projects that I'm ever since wrestling stuff, because I was doing a lot of work with Malachi with the clothing line. There'd be clothing line stuff there, but but he's kind of shuttered that for a bit. I truly don't know what he's doing with it. So most of the work was with them. I've had contracts and times where I've done stuff for breweries, labels for beer, other clothing lines here and there. But the most ongoing thing that's been, besides tattooing, has been with this gaming company. So, because it's been not only the Old Gods game that has come out, they are coming out with 3, I don't know if you call them expansion pack. I don't know if it's just that's what they are, if they're their own. But as far as I know, they're their own separate, unique story. And so there's 3 other Old Gods books that I did artwork for, the covers of and interiors of. Those are still coming out. There's a company group out of the UK, Rusty Quill. They have a show called the Magnus Archives, which I believe is in podcast form, similarly to Old Gods, who similarly to Old Gods came in, and then Monty Cook's going to do a game for them. So a lot of stuff with them, specifically a show called Magnus Archives, where for fans of that show, in the story, there's a supernatural, almost like children's book, and it's just part of the reading of the story. Well, the company had the idea to bring that book to life. So if you buy the game and get all the extras and all that jazz, what comes with it is literally that book come to life, which cover to cover I got to do the entirety of. And it's, so again, full circle moment, kind of strange. Did I do a book? Is it on the shelf at the store and a book? No, but it's the cover to cover book that I illustrated, and it's not my story, but everything from the lettering to the characters. So that's it's fun to still get excited to get to do stuff like that, because again, if all I ever did was a random little creepy children's book once, I would have been pretty jazzed about that, just being a horror fan all my life too. So I'd have been like, I got to do that cool thing. So it's been a lot of series of that. And then there's been a new show called the Darkest Woods that I've started work on as well. So company reaches out. I'm usually keep me pretty busy with that, but it's been primarily the gaming company now for quite a bit.
And now I got another question, because just listening, how do you find, because you're a dad, how do you find a perfect balance between home life and work? Because it seems like you're constantly busy. So where is that, if I may ask, you don't have to answer this. Where is that balance? Where's your center point here?
I'm sure, like yourself, you hear so many people out there advise, like, how do you find your balance, to answer your question, I have no idea. It's when people say you're just kind of figuring it out as you go. Like, as a kid growing up, I was convinced my parents had it all together. I mean, I never had to fear anything. It felt like it's like they got it under control. There was just, I wasn't ever worried. You were safe, protected. You believed that they had it all figured out. Then you get older, you become a parent yourself, and you realize, the hell they were doing. They were just
flying by the
hoping
ass.
a prayer too. They're just winging it. You're taking the best you can. You're trying to do the things maybe don't work or that you didn't like, and then you just try to apply it to the best of your ability. You stumble constantly. So part of that's the balance of it. It's like, shoot, it's so when you hear that, it's like, well, that's all well and good. What the hell does that mean? I benefit from certainly a wife I don't deserve. That's a big one. She's and like myself growing up, fortunately, tattooing in my career has allowed us to, since right before the birth of our daughter, our youngest daughter Rosie, she's been able to be a stay-at-home mom, by choice, and be able to just be there and raise her, and that's unfortunately, in my opinion, a luxury these days that's not common anymore, to be raised by your own parents. And so I'm so fortunate to be able, not only not to be able to do that because of a career that's been so good to me, but also finding a woman like her that does what she does, and she this is her out. She runs the fort there, so she's keeps all that stuff in order. So it makes it easy to go and be able to focus on your work and do that, and come home, and then she's effectively feels like she's done everything else. And the balance is schedules too. It's like, not only does she make that easier, but then I can go, all right, basically I just do what I can to put the kids first, no matter what. The hours I can't really break unless it's for serious stuff. I know is going to be my tattooing. I got schedules, I got clientele. They're booked out for months. There's a set thing, and while also trying to stay on top of emails, which I'm deplorable at, but I trying to keep people, getting them situated, because once we shut down the shop that we actually had, my partner and I had, I just remained as a private studio. So we went from the Washington Tattoo Collective, which was our business name, and I just renamed it to Scarborough Studio, that I've just been using since, because I was doing more than just the tattooing. And I thought, I'll just make our studio kind of one house for everything. So I still have to bring my work home with me, though. That's about every day. So, she's kids are in school, you come home from work and all that, and I might still have some projects. If I don't have projects that require illustrations or a job here, well, I have to work on the next day's stencil for somebody's tattoo or whatnot. So then I still spend another couple hours at home drawing before that. And then if I have, because when the gaming company hits me up, hey, I get like sheets. I get multiple, and okay. So then you're starting to like tack that on, and then it's like, where do you fit that in? So full schedule, you wake up. Luckily, I have the benefit of the wife to taking the kids to school in the morning. Single parents don't have this, and my heart goes out to them. Hey, but again, that's why I'm acknowledging I'm not taking credit for this. She gets the kids to school. I get to try to get a bit of sleep. I get a little bit of time to get up and get other things done. And other than that, I'm at work, and I'm at work straight there. If I'm fortunate, I'm hurry home. I can tuck in the kids at night, and then it's right back to work. And I'm doing that until it's time to go. Then it's trying to find time to hit the gym when I can, and then it's trying to get cleaned up, and then it's late at night. And then the knowing schedules, my work is close by. I have help. I have a partner who makes that easy. So I might not really be the one to ask, because as busy as I can get, I have a support system that is makes that a whole lot easier. So it takes a village. I don't pretend to be. So the balance has been fortunately made easier than I think it has been for maybe some other people. So I'll just say that.
I get the whole balancing thing, right? Like I run a podcast, I do my show.
Yeah, sure.
On top of that, I work around my kids like you, in a sense. Unfortunately for you with the tattooing, you can't. It's just kind of how that works.
Well,
but
plus
for me,
loving what you're doing too. If you're enjoying what you're doing, that it's corny as that might sound to people, but in cliche, it's true. I'm sitting there and I'm drawing creatures ripping somebody's head off. I'm drawing somebody feeding body parts to another animal. I'm drawing a guy or some witch in the woods. I'm drawing some jacked up piece of that's going to go on a metal band's collaboration that we were doing through the clothing line at the time. Why would I be mad about that? How would I look? That's not stress, and to me, that's not really working. That's just, again, being completely lucky, and hopefully I can continue to be. That's the name of the game. So I just I enjoy the hell out of it. So I think if you are doing something you don't necessarily love, and you're especially out there and you're trying to grind something else out, the side hustle, so to speak, and you're trying to make something else happen in your life, that's hard as hell. But that's where you see the success stories come from, the people who just commit, because that home life being what it is, you're committing to your children, you're a father, you're a husband, what have you, if you are, but you have commitments and responsibilities, and you treat that hustle, that their passion project, with the same reverence, and you care as much. And so you put in an hour, you turn back and you look and you're like, I didn't do anything all damn day but work, it feels like. I had moments where I got to see, my children, kind of thing. And because look, in an entire 24-hour span, because she's helping in the morning because I might be up late at night, I'm seeing I see my other two oldest kids are teenagers now. So I'll see them pretty regularly, but seeing your youngest, seeing your baby, and trying to be there for all those times and moments and whatnot, you got, 5 days out of the week. If I'm lucky, maybe I get a half hour a day. So, that is a sacrifice there, but I'm giving everything I can to my kids that I can afford to give. And some people don't have that luxury too. They would love to be a more attentive parent or be at home with their families. They got responsibilities, so they can't afford to not go to work and make the money that they have to make. So, there's sometimes that balance is forced on you. It's like, well, you can see them more, but you're going to suffer here. So that's why a lot of people don't get that. And, that time that they need so much, it is hard. So somebody coming along going, find balance. It's like, yeah, that's easy to say. It's very hard to do. So my heart goes out to people that have a harder road there. It's, I wish those situations all the best, and especially being a parent, but it's easier for me, I will say.
Like you, I have a wife that maintains that ship and balance for me, which is good. This is something I'm passionate about, and she makes sure it's written on the calendar so the older boys know, all right, this is what Dad's doing. Make sure not to get in the earshot of that, right?
No, same. I've had to take a business call or do this, that, and the other. I'll hear my daughter running down wanting to go see her, then she's cracking the proverbial whip and doing the general, like, yeah. She's running the ship. So yeah. I'm whatever. I'm lucky.
I'm a busy dad, right? I got like the hockey season stuff going right now, and I run the practices and stuff with them, and she's there for the games. That's kind of our balance trade up. I'll go do the boring crap so you can have some quiet time.
Yeah.
All right, man. Let's get into this. Excuse me. Let's get into this conversation. The world of professional wrestling and Kyle Scarborough. Where the hell did this collab come from, and why?
With Bray specifically,
just in general. Yeah. I don't know if that's the origin, the beginning of it. Yeah, I guess it would be Bray.
So, well, it's again one of those scenarios where I'm a fan of it. I've been a fan since I was a kid. Was a fan all my life. I had a lull during that mid 90s, maybe early-ish mid 90s. When the big lull happened, effectively, when the company was kind of the peak of the Bret Hart days, Shawn Michaels days, the smaller crowd days. I like most people, you fell, and I was one of them. And it wasn't until the Attitude Era, basically, about 90s, maybe 6, but I think it was maybe close to 97, that my best friend growing up, still best friend, he, and a hell of an artist too, named Jason Benton. He's like, he's hanging out with these new kids in class, and he loved, and they're like, we're going to see their wrestling show. And I remember kind of teasing him. I was like, you're going to go see a pro wrestling show? Thinking that, like, is Tatanka still there? Like, what cartoon nonsense are you going to go see? And and he goes, no, dude. And so we were over at the house one day at his house, and he puts in the VHS tape, and he's like, yeah, check this out. And, all I saw was this dude with a goatee. I didn't know who the hell Steve Austin was at the time. And we watched, because Stone Cold said it was like his first home video release, like hype video, that whatever the company put out back then. And that was pretty cool. That made me an Austin fan right out of the gate. And then we started, going to the shows. So then it became, now I got immersed in it. Now I'm a massive fan of it. what some people don't know is we became such fans of it. Said friend Jason and all of his new wrestling fan buddies at school, who then I became friends with because we all had the mutual interest. We all, like a lot of kids, started doing the backyard wrestling federation stuff. And so we had a trampoline. My parents are the only parents that would let us do it. I had some pretty rad parents. So other parents like, no, it's going to be lawsuits. So they let us have the trampoline in the backyard. My dad had actually built a deck off of for a short time, they tried the swimming pool until they realized how expensive and hard it was, and they sold it. It's strange. But we had a deck in the backyard for a long time, and we would film on that and whatnot. And we wrestled on a trampoline, just a basic trampoline, and we would dive and do stupid crap off of that through the course of all that, and taking bumps off of cardboard boxes and all kinds of silly bullshit. Then me and one friend of mine decided we want to really do this. So we found a local wrestling school. Now this is about, was it 99 or we've been in the 2000s yet? So somewhere around there, 99, I think 2000. Wrestling is, I mean, absolutely, it's at its zenith there a little bit, that late 90s right there. It's still riding that wave. So you got a lot of pop-up wrestling schools, mostly ran by people who have no business running them. We're not talking like you went to a wrestling school. You didn't go to Harley. We had Harley Race in Missouri, but you didn't go to a prestigious school. We're not talking about schools. So few of them had a guy who was connected. Go to school here and he can put you in with so-and-so, get into business kind of stuff. But me and my buddy wanted to be pro wrestlers. So we found a little hole in the wall school. It was a school that was ran by the local circuit that ran in our town here in Missouri. Just real backwoods, just, country ass wrestling stuff. And if a guy was like barely over 6 foot, he was doing some quasi Undertaker, big man, I don't take bumps gimmick. Guys who are they don't look like they've ever lifted a weight in their life, and they're just like, I'm a power, you know what I mean? Just bad indie wrestling, but also really great indie wrestling at the same time. So we went to school and I started learning how to do all that. Weirdly enough, because the guy who would then become my now a current friend, actually, we stayed in touch over these years. I didn't do it for a very long time, but he actually was on his way. He goes, yep, I'm getting ready to go to Japan. Now was a massive ECW and especially indie and Japanese fan. My buddy in St. Louis, he had access to the tape trading game. So he just had piles and piles and piles of VHS. So I was enamored with the, Kawada, Misawa, and Kobashi, and Taue, and all the old Japan Kings Road stuff, and Hayabusa. And I knew who Hayabusa was. Well, this friend of mine who's wrestling, he's getting ready to go to FMW. And I felt like, you gotta be shitting me. I know who that is. You're going to go wrestle at FMW show? And he got trained by Pat Tanaka, who was in the Orient Express back in the WWF back when. And Pat's got his own. If you look up MVP, the wrestlers, his opinion of this guy, Pat Tanaka, is pretty funny, but that's a whole other thing. But yeah, he got to go work in Japan and whatnot. So I got to hang out and wrestle some training sessions with Pat Tanaka. So that was the first time I ever had any real one-on-one with an actual pro wrestler. But that was enough for me. I'm a fan. That was cool as hell. So wrestled a bit, got to start working some shows that I got to be backstage and share locker rooms with guys that I was already a huge ECW fan of. And I got to get absolutely hammered with Balls Mahoney backstage at the time was Gateway Championship Wrestling, which actually Gateway and GCW in St. Louis has produced like Delirious. He was the head booker for Ring of Honor, and we had some time in TNA and whatnot. Matt Seidel, who's now in AEW, he was Evan Bourne in WWE, and he went on to wrestle with Ricochet in Japan and New Japan there and all that. So St. Louis has produced some names that have kind of come out and done some things too, which is pretty neat. And I got to work shows with those guys. So now I started to really go beyond. I mean, I was a fan, but now I was in it, and I wouldn't say made any kind of connections at that point in time, but technically, I mean, there were some, kind of people in there. So while ever trying to pursue that and seeing whatever I could do with it, and obviously it got to a point I never knew what. I thought maybe I would be cool to design merchandise for pro wrestling or something like that, but I never really had a goal in mind with it. So up until when I started using Twitter more, now I'm already been tattooing forever. I pay attention to wrestling, and we used to get together, watch the pay-per-views and stuff, but this is another sort of lull, but not a lull to where I'm not paying attention. I'm just not as intently watching all the time. the only thing, this is a true story, the only thing that ever really sort of kept me like, I got to turn on Raw and I get on my DVR and I'm going to fast forward through it and see. I want to see if that Wyatt family is on the show, because that dark, not Taxi Driver, that Cape Fear, Max Cady kind of look. Yeah, I know the Waylon Mercy references and all that stuff too, but I always saw the Wyatt family as something unique from that. But that kept my interest there. So I was messing around online, social media, talking to whatnot and wrestlers, and I ended up kind of just taking a shot in the dark, leaving a comment under Tama Tonga's some post that he had, and then weirdly that ends up becoming sharing artwork and whatnot, and he was New Japan had just started doing some stateside shows in LA. This is when they still had all the Bullet Club stuff. The Bucks and Kenny were still there, so it was weird. A little bit of the genuine animosity of the situation. It seemed like, from what I gather from multiple talent that I've talked to, although again, don't quote me, but what they said, the freedoms to kind of do what you want or experiment with your character or whatnot. You have a lot of that. You certainly don't have it in WWE, but you'd have that. AEW provides it as well and whatnot, but Japan seemed to have it a lot. So to the point where Tama was actually requesting that we redesign the Bullet Club logo itself, which is, I don't even know if I would have wanted to take on that gig, because I don't know if I want to be responsible for changing what is now arguably up there amongst the top levels of most famous wrestling logos is the Bullet Club design.
Yeah, it's pretty iconic, right?
Yeah, and he's wanting to change it, and he's asking me. That's a true story, and I thought, that's frightening. I'm not going to say no, but I'm going to be shitting my pants the whole time, because that's the most intimidating thing anybody's ever asked me to do. I did do a design for it based off of his request, which no matter how good I could have possibly done this design, I knew was never going to happen. And it didn't, and it never went anywhere. But I think that was him just trying to kind of make it happen. And but the one thing he wanted to do was make this Uncle Sam, the old Americana propaganda posters of Uncle Sam saying, "We want you," and join the armies and all that shit. So this was going to be based on that. So I had this sort of Tongan inspired person. Some of their Maori tattoos were exposed, and I used his patterns so I wasn't, completely pissing off the entire culture. I just wanted to make sure that the tattoos I drew on the characters that were hidden in there were his, and they meant what they meant. And but we got to do a hyper detailed, almost corpse paint on the face. The bandolier of bullets and all this kind of stuff, doing the Too Sweet sign and all that. So that was really my first sort of getting into pro wrestling a little bit. And, threw in a little money at it, drew him a design. I said, "What's this for?" He said, "It's going to be for posters." They were doing a Long Beach show. I think it was the main event of that show, matter of fact, was the Bucks versus Kenny and Kota. And so, anyway, because we're going to make posters and look like they're like join us posters for the audience, sort of the gimmick. We're gonna print that, and we're going to hang them anonymously around the venue. So if fans see them, it's like, ooh. And so it's not like a shirt or anything. He goes, no. So we worked up a quick and easy price for it. He's not using it or reselling it, I'm thinking, so it's all good. He did not tell the truth there, because next thing I know, that shirt started popping up on other sites. I don't know if Pro Wrestling Tees had it, but there's another company that was selling a lot of Bullet Club merchandise out of Australia, I believe, called Silver Lion. And my design was on a shirt, and he was probably wearing the shirt. On one hand, pretty sick to see Haku wearing a T-shirt with your art on it, but on the other, I didn't get paid for that. So, so thank you, Tama, for that learning curve there. And I think he knows, and I could give a shit less. So, but that kind of emboldened me a bit to just take chances. And so I could ask, how'd that work out? Similar to how you're asking, but other artists, well, how do I get into it? I'm like, there's no getting into it. Keep trying. Shoot your shot. That's all I did. When I say dumb luck, that's all I'm talking about. I can't write a book. I couldn't tell you how to do this. There's no magical way. I happened to be there like most people are. A wrestler requested something. I reached out. Luckily, for whatever reason, my stuff caught that performer's eye, and it worked out. It can work out for you the same. Just got to keep trying it. I've tried it with others. It didn't work, So this wasn't my first time sort of like, hey, I would love to. It worked out. thinking almost on a level of this won't work out. We're talking about a WWE performer. I do the same with Bray Wyatt. Well, actually, it was, I think I technically said something first to Tyler Bate. Where he was still going back. This is NXT UK stuff. And Tyler had, I think he has roses or something, but he has a piece on his forearm. He has a whole sleeve now, I believe. But at the time, he just had a forearm piece or something on his hand. Kind of similar, like a Conor McGregor kind of look. Anyway, he either had just gotten that, or I could tell. You watch TV and you can tell when a wrestler's out there working with fresh tattoos, which is horrifying to watch. But I can tell. Just like I can tell when Malachi has added work to this stuff. I just watching Collision, what have you, and I'm like, no, it was Rampage, but I'm like, oh, he had some wind bars, some of his Japanese stuff added because it's darker, and you're wrestling with it fresh. Drives me crazy. So I see Tyler with clearly a fresh tattoo or what have you. I commented on it. I said, hey, something along the lines of some dorky comment about I'd love the tattoo. I don't know what I said. I'm sure it was lame as hell, but I said something like that. And I also remember tagging Bray in it, thinking, since I'm sure I could never also get Bray Wyatt in there. And I tagged him. And he responded back. And he goes, I'm down. That's what he responded on Twitter. And I stared at it, double-checked that it was the blue check mark back when those mattered. And then it meant like that's who you're talking to. And so I thought, what? And so I think there might have been one other bit of discourse publicly, but I kind of quickly thought, no way this is happening because I'm a fan. I just DM'd him and I said, hey, I'm not sure if you're serious or not because I'm not thinking he is. I was like, but I'm more than happy to talk about it. I would like to design something for you to at least show you that I could do what you're looking for. And if you like it, great. If either that means I'll draw more because all right, or you want to buy it, great too. But I offered my services basically for free, not for free, but I'll draw it first before we talk about anything else, just to prove that I can do what you're asking for, see if I can be an asset to you, which is full credit to my old man on that one. He used to, one of those side gigs back when he was a fireman was cutting grass, and he started a lawn company, and it went well. And his thing was always, he goes, I'll just be honest with him. I was never the highest bidder. I was never the lowest bidder either. And sometimes when I would come across an object, or excuse me, a project that was going to be pretty daunting because of the size of the whatever, he would sometimes, he'd go, I tell you what, before I give you a bid, because it was going to be pretty expensive, I would like to actually maybe take a pass to get a sense of the time it would take and whatnot. I'll do your lawn for free. And if you like it, I'd like to definitely stick with it. It's always an incentivization on his part to do that, to get people to, and I don't know if I consciously did it, but that was a lot of, so take that advice for anyone who cares. I would, and it's one thing to just draw and tag wrestlers online and go, do you like it? That happens all the time. It's benefited sometimes, but very rarely. But I just mean really trying to find, not just, I drew a picture of you, or I made this thing. Try to, can it really be useful? You got to start maybe kind of understand usefulness and marketing kind of stuff, but just seeing where you might fit in with something like that. So in this particular case, it was about a tattoo. It wasn't even about any kind of artwork stuff yet. It was just, so if I'm going to sit here and open myself up and go, hey, I'll tattoo you, and he actually responds to me. So I DM'd him about it, gave him my name and number, and I'll be damned if he didn't text me. So that was the start of it. And then what went from chatting about a tattoo, the stencil of which I still have because can't get rid of it now, but I had the shop set up. I was all clean and ready to go. He was coming in the next day. We talked about this tattoo, booked it. I was absolutely terrified, but excited. And the last minute, we couldn't make it happen. But that stencil that we did, it was going to be a portrait of his grandfather, Blackjack Mulligan. I still have the stencil of that, of the face and the hat we were doing, and then this American flag backdrop. Bray wanted to put it on his calf. And that was his first tattoo idea with me. And he always said, even when we did the hand and whatnot, that he'd like to come back and do it sometime, but it obviously never happened. So even after the failure of that appointment that it had fell through, him and his brother were just, the flights were delayed, basically. We stayed in touch. And I didn't want to be annoying. Didn't want to be that guy who's just, so hey, are we best friends now? Like, I didn't want to start bugging him. So I'd wait, and he'd text me something. And it got to be a little bit more casual chit chat here and there, but he might ask me something. We talk about some stuff, and luckily had some mutual interest that kind of kept things going. But then it was kind of just out of nowhere, which the story goes, and I've told quite a few times, but it was just my phone just starts going ballistic. I'm on the couch. It's a quiet evening. My daughter and my wife flanking me, and it's quiet. TV's on low, and my phone just starts going off and off and off. And that was the start. That was him sending me all the photos. That was bombarding me with mask photos, horror movies, characters, creatures, design shit, just all kinds of wild aesthetics that I had. What I thought he messed up. I thought he sent it to the wrong person, or like butt dialed me basically. I thought, what is he losing his mind? Does he know he's doing this? Because it was a lot. It was like 40, 50 images were coming in through text. And but that's when he had his idea, and he went, and then we made the mask.
So it's been said, and I'm sure you've heard this numerous times about Windam, arguably the most complex, creative person out there.
Well deserved, yeah. I
mean, you want to shed some light from your personal experience on that?
Yeah, well, what I just said is certainly is a perfect example. Yeah. that night of him just blowing me up with the text messages was my first introduction into how his mind can work sometimes. I absolutely believe, I know that there are other performers out there who, I won't speak comparisonly, that's rude, but I know are very creative people. I've heard their ideas that I envision as a fan, and I'm like, oh my God, that would be amazing. Doesn't mean it's ever going to happen through whatever reason. Either the boss is going to say no or whatever. So Windam was, I think he exuded that as well. I don't know, but he's been known for that even going back all those days and early on, obviously. If you've seen the documentary or hear people talk about him, he's always had there's a magnetism with him. I mean, there's the creativity that we're talking about, but he's so easy to pay attention to him. I mean, almost like a snake oil salesman or an old, silver-tongued Southern preacher type. I mean, he's good at it, not manipulatively, because he's only known as being an absolute sweetheart. I truly have never heard anyone say otherwise to that.
I never heard anything otherwise.
He's unique. He's unique. He himself was just a kind of person that when people go, you find yourself wanting to be around that person because they make you laugh or smile. There's something genuine about them. There's never anything hateful or ornery about him. He's funny as hell. He's all those kinds of things. He was just a good person. So how he wrangled in that creative side, though, how he was able to work those things out, coexist together, because his ideas were so at times off the rails nuts and dark. And dark not in just like a cheap way. We're not talking like add some horns and some devil shit and call it dark. No, that's corny. That's easy. We're talking about something that has more substance to it, something that really goes deeper in that, something that speaks to you. He had his view on things was almost cinematic already. He worked on layers is another way to word it too. He wasn't just this one-dimensional type, obviously, but when you try to go, all right, my job is to take all that madness and put it on paper, that's intimidating. But again, very, very exciting. So you have to sort of let him get it all out. You can't stop a tornado once it starts. Just let it, it's going to do whatever it's going to do. And then wait and see. That's kind of how it was. He kind of had to get it all out, and then you had to kind of pick away at it and kind of go this, that, and the other, because he's a very visual person. He'll send all those images. He'll send you images. He can send you 10 images. Only one really has an actual shape, an object that he's going, I like that to look like that. He can send the 9 others. You go, oh, did you like this or like this design or like it? He goes, I don't know. He sent what he felt. He would send images. I'm like, did you like this mask? He goes, I don't know. No, I don't like the shape of the mask. I don't like this illustration. And he didn't always, it wasn't just masks, but it would be creature design, artwork, famous images, popular stuff from movies and film. But I'm like, did you want it to look like this creature from this movie? He's like, no. But like, you know how when you watched it and the way it kind of came out and the way, I guess, the lighting had that hue to whatever else. And just, there's just something about that was so, you know, and I'd be like, yeah, I mean, I know what you mean as far as that's dope as hell to look at that movie, but what does that have to do with what I'm drawing right here? And he's like, it was beyond that. I mean, that's what I mean. He would go that, I need you to understand the mood that it invokes and apply that. Like, so that was, the wild thing is that when it's all said and done, the final result, and this applies, I think this goes to anybody who's just designing anything, the final result, it's so hard to, you can't see all that finalized its way into that design or that reason for being. You know, I couldn't even tell you the answer to this question that a lot of fans want to know, but I've seen it like, well, why were things designed the way they were in particular? Why the choice to do this, that, and the other? Why the traditional praying hands of Christ on his singlet? It seemed out of place. It did. It seemed out of place for me. I go, what does that have to do with this? But while on one hand, some would say it was some sort of weird cheap shot, almost that lazy, some sort of look at me, I'm evil, so I'm mocking and I'm using this iconic image kind of thing. That wasn't him for a lot of reasons, but it definitely wasn't him. He's not going to do the I'm going to offend you to offend you stuff. He wasn't some little edgelord kid. He wasn't trying to there was deeper stuff to that, and things meant stuff to him. And those design choices and whatnot. And other designers got to be a part of that process. I'm not, I can't think of her name, unfortunately, but the person who actually designed the gear, the tights and all that kind of stuff. And he would reference her a lot, and he would speak that he knew this person here who made these types of coats and everything else. And he would use people because he liked their art, and that's how that collaboration works. So then he'd give them what he wants and they'd create that stuff. But he had reasons for doing it more than just, when he did the Fiend mask, you could dumb it down to the Joker and Lobo. And that's effectively true when it comes to the design of that mask that we did. But his reasons behind it and what it would morph into and the ins and outs of why the mask would remove wasn't just because, oh, it looked cool in a comic book. It was going to pertain to this character that's, unfortunately, that iteration of that Fiend version 1, never got a conclusion to that story at all. So, and the comeback, instead of just going back to that, which was a thought that he did have, he was actually quite scared that the new thing wasn't going to work. If I remember him saying so on the phone, he goes, man, I hope this is going to work out. This is, and I'm sitting there like, yeah, well, you said the same thing the first time around, and I think that worked out for you. And he goes, well, I don't know. He was hyper afraid that he was going almost too deep, I guess, and not to sound like on some arrogant level, just what are we watching? We're watching Monday Night Raw. We're watching pro wrestling, for Christ's sake. No one's sitting here also expecting to have to sit here and think on a critical level or try to psycho. He wanted to really go in that almost that television side of it, and you'd see people talk about, well, make a movie. Yeah, he should have, because the way he thoughts work would have been good for that. He does not need to be, that character was bigger than a wrestling show. And by that, I mean, you're given, this character shows up every once in a while. He has a segment, he has a pro wrestling match, but you're also trying to tell his story. That's such a small bubble for that universe that he built in his head to exist. It needs more. He needs his own damn TV show that we just sit and watch. I don't care. One of my absolute favorite things that they ever did with that was the WrestleMania match, COVID match with Cena, because that got to be the closest that ever came. I know they did some other things too. That was the definition of cinema. Yeah, like, it was so fun. I had the same face as O'Neal did at the end. I had a blast watching that. That was fun. I haven't had fun like that watching the most non-pro wrestling thing I'd seen in my life as a non-child. As an adult, to sit here and have that sort of, I was on the edge of my seat. So I always would ask about that, and I would always hint and want to do those things. And I'd seen people constantly talk about it, and I have no idea. You said you've spoken to him. I don't know if anything ever came from. I know those photos popped up with him and Jason, wherever that was. Assumptions were made that he was making a movie.
Yeah, I heard
Yeah,
that too, but nothing ever came to fruition that he was making a movie, and then it just kind of.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what.
Unless what you think, in reference to the documentary, maybe him and Taylor, when they did their little show pilot thing, maybe that's where people took that and kind of just ran in the opposite direction.
Yeah, I kind of forget about that sometimes. I don't know if I really knew that was a thing until somewhat recently, or maybe even during.
I didn't know that was a thing until that documentary. So
yeah, because the documentary was something I haven't finished the documentary, but because that was showed early on, I believe. The picture and talking about they would make these videos together and all that stuff, and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, he was coming up to St. Louis for that tattoo appointment that I spoke to. It was him and Taylor were together to come up, and they got, by Sunday, instead of being at the shop when we talked about being there, he was still stuck in Atlanta in the airport with Taylor. So talk about that was a bummer. But so I mean, I was kind of, I've never had a chance to ever speak with or Taylor on any level. I don't know if he would have came with him for that tattoo session, but if he had, I would have been able to. But he's not someone I've ever spoken to, unfortunately. But anyway, I kind of go off on a tangent. I'm sorry.
No worries. Like you, Windam really drew me back into wrestling, and I mean avidly. Like I was out of it. Like I was bored of it, and then this Wyatt family appeared, and I'm like, what is this? And then it just took off. My fandom, dude. When I tell you, I have the Funkos, I have the figures. I made my own Firefly Funhouse that sits on my shelf. Like this is the man that I idolize, and I have made that known to everybody. I have the words I showed you on my arm. Most of people that watch this have seen them. I am the color red.
Yeah.
I posted it on Instagram and Micah liked it. So, I mean, now his family has seen that, right? So, and now I'm talking with you. It's kind of a full circle moment for me. Speaking with someone that's was close with Windam. It's huge for me. And it's awesome hearing that he was such a great person.
Yeah.
And it's not just it's a hear you. No. You're hearing the life experiences. Like, so I have to ask, because I did see something back when the documentary came out that you were quite upset about something that was documented. Do you want to talk on that now that it's been a little bit, or is that not something you want to talk about?
No, it's I'll preface by saying I am fully aware. I thought this is not anything that by bringing up, I don't think benefits me. I felt more like, it feels a little entitled to have an opinion about this. I wouldn't want that to be the response to it. I don't know what I want to, I didn't have an intention of a response, but yeah, the frustration was the documentary, and that I know that there was a tidier packaged recollection of that process, of that design phase, and namely, like I was asked, and I say all that to say this, I'd have people kind enough to say, oh man, that's, why didn't they have you on the documentary? And I thought, oh my God, there's no reason for me to be on the documentary. Of course that would be amazing as a fan, of such so much love for him, that I would have absolutely loved to have done it. But that it would have been me, it's irrelevant. Jason made the mask. Jason did that bulk work to that stuff. Jason was there for the puppets. He did, he was the creative. He was the art director in a lot of ways. Windam had his idea. I've spoken to this before, that I got to be a cog in a wheel, and I'm not the damn wheel. It wouldn't have been. It was equal parts. Sure, you just like, damn, you couldn't. You're talking about this character, and they're going into the backstory. If they had not gone to the backstory, we wouldn't be having this conversation. If they hadn't bothered to give this, let's talk about the creation. Where did this thing that everyone fell in love with, where did this come from? Well, if you're going to do that, then I feel like I at least have a right to have a little bit of a problem with the fact that you didn't tell that true. And who and why, I don't know. I'm not pointing. I don't know who's it. I don't know. So, but for me, it was at the very least, if I would have seen just a simple, like, they didn't, for one, I mean, none of the that I had designed showed up, which is pretty, I'm sorry, kind of glaring considering you designed, we're talking about the Fiend and the mask, and we're talking about the Lantern. The two main components of that character, and you know, not to get a credit. And it comes down, I've said that before. I said it with Jody and her show that she had. And I champion this for anyone out there. And I don't think much people would disagree with this. Artists don't get the credit that they deserve sometimes. And artists, I see it online all the time. Their art gets used. They don't get credited. Creators are easy to kind of get bullied out of the way. They're easy to be taken advantage of and manipulated, especially if you're working in something that you also are a fan of. I don't have any ill will. I watch TV. I hope the man does great, but I'm also 43 years old, dude, and I run a business. So the fandom is cool, but this is man-to-man stuff. And man-to-man, whether he wants to disagree or not, something like how that went down with Tama, that was wrong. It's wrong no matter how you slice it. You lied. You said no, and then you made it, and then somebody made money, and it damn sure wasn't me with my creation. Mm-hmm. If you don't think that somebody has a right to have a problem with that, then oh my God, I worry about what how you treat people. No one wants to be taken advantage of. No one, and artists want credit because sometimes that's enough. Not a little attaboy, pat them on the head. People trying to make a living. People want to get somewhere with it. If they're not going to draw something that yields them a return, well, hopefully they yield something else. Those people in positions of power like that, or influence, or celebrities, or whatever, in this particular case, professional wrestlers, they have an opportunity with their platforms to champion the artists who are giving them something effectively for free, and then hopefully doing something right by them if they end up using it, right? But most of the point is that wrestlers, I think, have gotten a whole lot better about sharing, and they'll share that artist's work, and they'll give credit to that artist, because that could still lead. That's still a networking. That's still getting your stuff out there. It's not to get that credit for something that I feel was, pretty meaningful to some people was quite the bummer. And then especially got to showing those, sketches and folders and whatnot of the drawings, and, Windam's word to me that, hey, we've seen a lot of drawings and they're just not, not working out. Windam wasn't, he always spoke of his love for Jason. So making sure to not make it anything other than that. But the way he said it was, Jason's designs weren't quite hitting, I guess, or whomever else's, but I'm pretty sure it was some of Jason's designs. Those were not getting this project where it needed to go. That's what it was said to me by the man himself. So you watch a documentary and they're talking about a creation of something that you're a part of. And then they even show art of this character that you did tons more of that wasn't, done. But with the plenty of sketches and stuff that we would talk about, and I would take a quick picture of and show them, and modifications. I worked on it. You have a folder full of sketches. None of those are mine, and you're not credited for that when you should be. Yeah, that I have a problem with. I just have a problem with it. It stung. Mostly that it hurt. I would love to be all tough about it, but it hurt. It hurts a bit because it's something that you cared about a lot. He was something, he was somebody that I did designs for him that didn't even get used, and I was doing them on my anniversary trip. My wife and I are on vacation, and I carved out a few hours to sit in our cabin and illustrate so I could get these drawings on time for him. I've told the story of the burned Fiend mask that he asked me to do with 2 hours to completion because he was upset that they were doing this. And his words were, I have my crew, or however you phrase it, I've got my team. I come to you for the drawings for stuff. Jason makes my sculpts, and there's another name or two that he would reference. I can't recall who that was. He was upset. His words to me, Windam's words were, they're trying to just take this over. They're making this mask, and they are, I hate their drawings for it. And I was like, why didn't, did you want me to do them? I'd be happy to do them. You could have asked me. He goes, no, I didn't know they were doing it. He goes, what their drawings terrible. He didn't like it. And he goes, can you do this? Can you have it to me before the show's over? Because as soon as Raw is over, Vince is going to do his thing and be gone. I want to get this to him before the show. Like, no, this is who I work with. And that's how he was hyping me up in the conversation. So, I crashed it as fast as I could and got the best sketch I could come up with in 2 hours of trying to take the Fiend mask and like it was melting. And, took some specs that he wanted in there, like exposed sort of base level or like bone kind of look, because at this point it's not an underlayer mask. At this point we're treating it like it's, I guess, down to the bone. It's the Fiend is burnt up, so there was going to be exposed bone bits and whatnot. I don't know if they had that in the mask that was actually done as far as actually detailing those parts in there, but that was something that you hurry up and get done. And then for another very confusing period in that is where conversations are now starting to be dropped for reasons that I don't have answers to. And when we did the burnt Fiend mask, he took it, said, "Oh, sweet." I was at the gym that night, I remember, and I was hadn't heard anything yet. I texted him. I said, "Hey, did that work out? Did everything go okay with that?" Yeah, no problem. Hopefully so. All this kind of stuff. He's like, "Man, they keep trying to." He always painted the picture that they were constantly trying to change what he wanted to do, and which it was understandable. No performer gets to do whatever they want to do, but it was apparently a point of frustration. I imagine it would be trying to take his idea. How do you make that work for a television spot? Like I said earlier, it's a lot you're trying to corral. So, and he was passionate, as he had every right to be. So he even sent me him in the gimmick, one of the first studio shots of wearing the gear. Now I could immediately tell that's not how I designed the mask. Perfectly fine. I go, oh, but since he sent it to me, I'm like, all right, is this one of those, like, I designed it, they went ahead and took that, and then artistically Jason or whomever sculpted something different? That's it. That's all he sent. He then went on to say that he was mad because he made some implication. Oh, I take it back. Let me back that up. I was kind of forgetting how that went. I then text or DM, whatever it was, Jason, and say, man, mask looks killer, whatever I said. His response back was, what are you talking about? And exasperated. And I thought, what do you mean, what am I talking about? Like the picture? And I didn't send him the picture because then I was like, why is he messing with me? So I was like, the mask. I saw the pose shot. And I might have even said I saw a picture. I can't remember what I said, but because he was like, well, send me it. What are you talking about? And he kept selling it. He kept going with this. I don't know what you're talking about. Now, mind you, at this point, Windam has expressed to me that they're not trying to use his people. He didn't say just me. He said his people. So now, because of Jason, I'm assuming they used my drawing. Somebody changed it, but Jason didn't even sculpt it. I text Windam. I was like, dude, what the hell? Did they not even have Jason sculpt it? That's fucked up. Like, I was mad for Jason. I don't hear anything back from Windam about it. At this point, I'm kind of mildly panicking. Like, this mask got made and Jason doesn't know, and I'm the reason the whole thing was weird.
Right.
So eventually, he's even like, after a few days, he reaches out again. Hey, man, what's going on with that man? He's keeping the sell job going here. He's keeping it like he doesn't know what the hell I'm talking about. So at some point, and I don't remember if it was me finally responding, I'm like, I don't know what the hell's going on here. I'm not hearing back here. He sent me Windam sent me the shot. Like, I thought you made the mask. He goes, I was kidding. I did. I was like, what? You were kidding. You were kidding about. I was like actually bothered by it. I was bothered for him because I thought he was being screwed over, not by Windam, but by the, I was, and then I was like, you drug out this what joke? Like, dude, we have existed. I think we shared one phone call. Otherwise, it's been an online relationship. We do not know each other on a humor level. Why would I think you were kidding? I'm going to absolutely take you serious in something like that, especially because he sends me the picture, giving me the indication that it was my design. That is an assumption of mine, but otherwise, why'd you send me if you know it wasn't me that they used for the design work, what are you sending me the shot of it for? It's like, I wasn't used. I'm being, it was a very confusing period. If that wasn't confusing me trying to explain it, but that's how it went down. And that started just sort of an odd kind of process, because then I was like, okay, so Jason did make it. The odd person out was my design. Fair. I think he might have said something to the effect of they went with one of the in-house artist designs. Okay, so that's what they chose for to make the mask for. I guess someone else within the company had made it. But at that point, I was so confused and put off by what was this weird, sort of bizarre behavior. So and there were some other small things. I won't get into it, but it was just more of just like weird, just weird. I walked away from these experiences, these things going, what the hell's going on? This was weird.
When you start talking to yourself, right? It's
this trippy stuff. It was just like this goofy, like, what the hell? Like, is this like, he starts making you like real paranoid, I guess. Like, why is this funny kind of behavior? And then again, there's just some other little things, but all right, everyone's got the little peculiarities. Doesn't matter. We don't have to be the exact same kind of person. It's fine. But there was never any reason to think that there was I was so concerned about doing anything wrong. Mind you, now I'm designing this. I remember when it was Windam who shared the initial sneak peek of the sketch. He like a little, he just like a crop picture of the face of the mask design, the concept art. He shared that on his Instagram. And then I was like, oh, can I share it too then? And he goes, yeah, it's your art. Go ahead. And I was like, yeah, well, it's also not. Like, I just made it for the company who's making a mask that has yet to debut. I'm pretty sure you posting a picture and me posting a picture and all that, pretty telling. Like, you know what I mean? You're going to know what you're being shared. So when he shared that crop shot, like, people didn't know really what the hell it was. I wasn't going to be the spoiler thing. You don't design something, the shirt's going to drop on this day, and you, the designer, drops it 3 days early on your Instagram and goes, look what I designed for so-and-so coming out soon. Can't do that. So I was like, I'm not going to put that out there. But once he did, he gave me the okay. And he's like, just go ahead, it's your artwork. And I was like, that's not how it works, dude. So I went ahead and I shared some at the time. And even from that point on, it started to kind of gain traction. The mask came out. People responded as they did. No one would have any reason to know who anyone really was in the creation of the process of it yet. It started to kind of be Tom Savini did it, and that carried most of the time. Going back to the crediting your artist, here's Tom Savini, a guy that is a legend in my eyes, like most people's too. Love all of his moves. I wanted to go to his school and learn how to make creature effect makeup under him. And I was upset, genuinely. I don't know what this makes me. Overly, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't care this much. But it was online, was constantly Tom Savini, Tom Savini, Tom Savini. I never once was like, nuh-uh. I always like, no. Jason Baker, who works for Tom Savini, he's Tom's student. And where the relationship at that point, if he was just a full-fledged employee, I don't know. But Tom was his mentor. I was like, Jason did that match. I had said that enough to where Jason eventually kind of got involved and goes, hey, man, it's cool. Don't worry. Yeah, Tom absolutely had a hand in it. He's helping out. And I was like, okay. All I'm doing is going back for the artist, not getting credit. Because at that point, Jason hadn't done anything of note as far as on whatever he was doing as a career goes. This was a big national spotlight type job. And then, he does the Corey Taylor's mask, that plastic like burn victim thing. He does Corey Taylor's mask. Shortly after that, and then he's done the movies and everything else. But I was looking at, like, genuinely thought, I don't want this man to get overlooked, because sort of like the worker bees tend to be overlooked sometimes and all the credit goes to this, when it's like, nah, they did it. I'm a big defender of artists for that reason. So, but that seemed to start, weirdly enough, kind of an odd back and forth a bit. And that carried over to all the way past all this to, if you remember the Huskus, the Pig Boy mask that artwork had made it out there, just the patchwork kind of leather face with the big iron. Yeah.
I was about to ask about that, because I've never actually, don't think I've ever got an explanation on that one.
Oh yeah, I'll go right into it in a sec. But when we came out with that drawing, the reasons that we'll get to in a second, it was made, it wasn't used. I can only speak to it's somewhat, at least part of what I know, the purpose of its creation to be, and why it was shelved. I can only assume was just creatively not doing it. And after he was released, that initial firing thing,
still stupid that they ever did that, but
yeah, absolutely. It was mind-boggling because he was like the number
their
one
top
merch seller
seller at that time. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't get it either. But he did had, I believe, maybe it was just a new contract, and they were just trying to chop all that money out. I don't know. Business is. I'm not a businessman like that, dude. I have no idea how all that snake stuff goes down. But it seems so. Why would you? It just doesn't. You're running a business to make money. Whatever. That's a whole other thing. So it was. He gets let go, and the relationship was. It was still. Now it was weird. It was like I would not hear from Windam regularly. If I asked direct questions about the situations, I oddly would like not hear anything. And then I would be like, hey man, did you see that, whatever, see this movie thing, or have a different question that maybe wasn't related to the artwork, something else that we was bullshitting about. And then he'd respond to that. I was like, are you working me here? Like, what? This is going, and this is on the heels of the burnt mask situation. This is on the heels of trying to design all this stuff for Alexa at the time, once they put Alexa with them, and that was bothering them, which I don't want to speak into that too much, but there were, and I think from creatively, I'm not putting any fingers at her. I just mean creatively, he was.
They were a great pairing, but I'm sure there was something that Windam didn't enjoy or Alexa didn't enjoy.
Yeah, there's one aspect that I know about that actually doesn't come from Windam, but it's gossip, so I'm not getting into it.
Of course.
The main thing was for him to creatively, I don't think he was super jazzed about. Now he wasn't necessarily telling me what it was, but he wasn't real excited about that. So he was coming to me saying, hey, I got this idea. I want to make her look like this, and so on and so on. He was trying to keep control, and that's most of it. That's the undercurrent to all this, is Windam constantly trying to maintain control over his creation and guiding it where it needs to go. When you have whoever else going, let's do this, and he's like, that's so stupid. So he fought that a lot, and one of them was early on Alexa thing. Everything that I designed that he wanted, we designed it. I've since shared it, and it's been out there, but it never got used. And then it started being this thing where he was asking me to design stuff. I'm designing it. He's paying me for it. The company's not using it. I mean, that gives you a complex after a while. Like, what is it me? Like, what? So for some reason, that's kept being the thing that we were running into. And then for whatever unfortunate reason, because again, another one of those things that kind of bummed me out. I was like, oh, I don't know why. If something's weird with Jason, I hope there's something maybe we could explain that through. But I don't know. I'd also think that what could there be? We moved on and we did the work, but really it was Windam would reach out to me. I was working directly with Windam. At that point, besides early on, it was 100% only him, unless I was dealing with it. It was a contract situation with the company. But I was just working with him. Effectively, I felt like I worked for him. He would commission me to do something and then try to get the company to do it. And when the company did do it, they were forced to come out and give me the contract for it. But I know, and it makes sense, but I know that the company strives really hard to keep all their productions in-house. They're not a big fan of paying outside artists to do stuff. I know that to be very true up until very recently with a completely different performer who everything was on the go. He wanted it. He loved it. And as soon as it got to them, to the art department, whoever was in charge of that, he goes, his words were, they started ignoring my email from their own performer. Until finally, after they're quiet for a while, he goes, all of a sudden, some design shows up in my inbox like, hey, what do you think of this? It's not the same thing I drew. You can't look at the two, and because I didn't create anything, I did an iteration of the character's face. But they basically did the same damn thing. Because if there's one element to the design that I like, how I incorporated the design, if they're outside of just creating a portrait, that design element was used in their shirt. Did they copy my stuff? Doesn't matter. Not really. But also it's weird though.
Sorry to cut you off. It's the definition of I copy your homework, but don't make it look the same.
Yeah. And he's coming to you going, I want this. You stonewall your own performer to then apparently, according to him, produce something that looks, it's not the same. It didn't look the same. But the one unique design element that was used. And well, then maybe the next question becomes, was that design element something that you came up with yourself? Has it been already popularized? I can't say with utmost certainty, but I'm pretty sure no, especially not given what we're talking about and why. I'm 99% sure no. Like what I did aesthetically as a design that was used in their version. So that bothers you a little bit, but I can't stand on that. I can't make a case for it. It is what it is. Whatever. Nobody stole anything of mine. All I know is that he wanted to use it. They didn't say no. They just ignored him and then made their own. So it's become now it's been that way as well since Alistair left and became Malachi at AEW. But the relationship up to staying on with Windam, though, the relationship up to that just started to get kind of strange. And we just, even again, the Alexa stuff, everything else, designing things that aren't getting used and whatnot. And then by the time we get to that Huskus, the pig mask design, he's already let go from the company. I reached out and I said, hey, and Jason, I believe somebody started sharing like, oh man, look at this picture. A lot of mutual people would know, fans of Windam's that you see on social media and whatnot. They were sharing the shot that I think Jason had shared of like candid stuff or something he was working on with Windam. I can't remember what it was. I text Windam again, who I've not heard from in a bit at this point, to say, hey, I was going to share the artwork that we worked on. Like, it never went anywhere. You're not even there anymore. He's telling me he's contemplating a lot of things. He chatted with me a little bit about what he was thinking about doing at that point while he was released. Well, I'll just share the artwork then. They would have to, it's their character anyway. I mean, he couldn't take the Fiend in with him. So whatever, who cares? And he said, it's your art, man. He would always say that. It's your art, your creation. I share said picture of this Huskus the Pig Boy mask. And I get a text from Windam and he's like, oh man, we were going to make that a mask. I went, who was going to make it a mask? He's like, well, Jason was still going to sculpt it. And I was like, for what? It was an unused character mask that didn't happen. And that answer I'll give real quick again in a second, but it was an unused character mask. And knowing, I go, and this mask, this particular mask, actually, since it was drawn so quick and then it was abandoned so quick, and I've done so many other little sketches that weren't like, it wasn't a constant. Every time I drew something, he cut me a check. This was something that we never exchanged currency on. So it's mine. My art, it was never produced by the company. It was never paid for. So I shared it. He's like, oh, we're still going to make it. Now, he almost kind of implied like for his comeback. And I was like, Windam, with who? What comeback? It was just more of an idea, but I guess they intended on using it. And I said, well, asking me would have been, because I'm not even thinking if you would have told me that, I wouldn't have shared it. So that bothered him, but it was fine. After that, he's like, hey man, you ready to get back into it again? And we started working on other stuff. But it was around that time that this whole very confusing scenario with Jason keeps going, and all of a sudden it becomes like, he's we're doing blocking on social media now as a result of this mask thing. Just weird, and I don't have any other explanation beyond that. Eventually, you just got to kind of wash your hands of it and go, all right, I don't know if there's just, you don't like the cut of my jib or something, dude. Like, did I just rub you the wrong way? Did I say something? The only thing that, early on, the excitement got a hold of me. I was on my personal social media account, not my art pages. And I just kind of got it out there, like my excitement and happiness of getting to work on this mask. And it had debuted at this point, and I had shared, some of the conversation between Windam and I. It was a private post. Had somebody go, hey, can you make this? I wanted to share this with somebody. Can you make it shareable? I was like, yeah, I'll make it public. That's when I make it shareable. I make it public, not thinking that anyone would ever see it, because I'm using Instagram and Twitter a bit at the time exclusively for all wrestling stuff. It wasn't even Facebook. Nobody's even looking at my Facebook. I was wrong. I believe the first person to come across it was Ryan Satin, who was still doing whatever he was doing at the time. And I believe he was the first person to come across my Facebook page and then share my giant post, my big thankful post that I made that was meant to be for friends and family. That's where my name started. I mean, the comments and the numbers, social media were going just bump. It was the closest thing to trending I'll ever get. It was kind of funny. And it was like, golly, all day long, just the notifications aren't stopping because you shared that. Then people found that post, and then, follower count on Instagram goes up and whatnot. Then you start seeing articles that are, oh, this is the guy who designed the mask. This is the guy who designed the mask. Kyle designed the mask. Now I'm going, no, I didn't. I did not design the mask. Whoa. And you're trying to sort of corral that because people just, I don't know if they can't read, but people just take a part of a story and twist it, and that becomes news, and then somehow that becomes journalism, and then now just incorrect shit is just everywhere. That's what it was. I would see it all the time. I was defending it if it was happening to Jason. I was defending it if it was happening to someone, to something I knew better about, if I could talk about it. I was defending other people, and kind of feeling like it'd be nice if maybe somebody kind of did the same for you as well. And so when you're doing those things, and then I was so hyper worried that I was upsetting someone by that getting out. I didn't give out any so-called insider information or anything that hurt anything. The one thing, almost in a protect kayfabe kind of way, I was like, shit, I'm sharing this intimate conversation I'm having with this performer who's now trying to sell on television, whatever this is, this Mr. Rogers Turns Evil thing we're watching right now. And it was, it was so conversation starter heavy that it was trending, it was popular, it was blowing up. And then right after that is my corny ass post about, isn't that great? It's so exciting. And that kind of catches wind. I thought maybe I was damaging their character. I was profusely sending, not like multiple times, but I remember sending like, dude, if I've done something, I don't know if you saw that getting out there. I go, I did not intend for that to happen. It was a shared thing, blah, blah, blah. And it was only for that. It was like, I just didn't want that, like, you don't need to see how pull the curtain back just yet. I mean, we all know that somebody designed a mask, and that's a man wearing a mask on TV, blah, blah, blah. But still, we're selling this story, this character. And I went in and, you got to see and Windam was like, what are you talking about? I don't give a shit. That's awesome. I'm excited. You should be excited too. This is your victory too, he would say. This is all of us. We all did, blah, blah. He was that's what I mean, dude. He'd make you feel like $1 million all the time. So he's like, no, don't be upset about it at all. But from then on, that, other relationship was kind of bizarre. And then the company ultimately, I think, got a little weird, because especially by the time the Aleister Black character left, because we were starting to do work for him for the return he was going to have at the time after getting his eye gouged out by Seth and Buddy in that. So we were working on stuff together for that then he got let go.
Another stupid mistake, but anyhow.
Yeah. But he, as the windfall of that and me working with him, I got a really bizarre email from the company asking if I had sold Aleister Black artwork, and I said I did not. I sold Tom Budgen artwork, who no longer works for you. I didn't draw Aleister Black merchandise. I drew a picture of a guy with demon wings and huge, massive horns. I'm pretty sure you don't know anybody that looks like that. And it had the man's face. You don't own his face. We didn't put Aleister Black or any other gimmicky anything that had to do with the company, but apparently they took that. It must have bothered them, because ever since then, and the WWE related stuff is when I started doing everything with AEW, because they just got I don't know. He apparently, I told him, and then he had to go at it with somebody. It's here nor there.
Could that be? I don't mean to cut you off.
No,
but that point in time could be maybe why they decided not to mention any bit of you in the documentary.
Right. What I mean? It's easy to take that information, and it's an easy dot to connect.
I'm not twisting anything other than the conversation we're talking.
Yeah, it's the same dot I connected to, because I thought, is that related? You just can't help but take these scenarios that are not easy to talk about. I'll tell you. I mean, they're not. I'll talk about them because of whatever. But it's not, because on one hand, it's like just whatever. Not every job works out. Relationships begin, they end, move on. Who cares? And I mean, we're here because we're talking about Windam, and that's part of that story. Otherwise, I move on. I do this, I do that. It was a great time. I hold, there's no ill will stuff. I don't care. I just think I look back and go, maybe there was something that happened that I don't know about, that, we're talking about. He's in Florida. I'm in the St. Louis area. He's up around Pittsburgh. This is correlating online, my relationship with other designers and whatnot, people over in Europe and Amsterdam and the community. So everything's online and whatnot. So perhaps somewhere there was some love. We didn't spend time together, right? We didn't know each other deeply. Speaking of, Jason and I in this particular case. So it's fine, but it pertains to the information as it stands. And the wrestling business is overall, it's pretty cutthroat stuff. I mean, the person who emailed me about selling the Tom as artwork and then trying to interpret it as Aleister Black stuff, they were very clear that they were aggravated by it. But because I didn't do anything, but there's nothing to do. I didn't overstep. I didn't commit any foul here. I'm a freelance artist who sold artwork to a contracted employee that doesn't work for you. I mean, he's an independent contractor himself, I mean to say. So that seemed to start that issue. And I guess if, sometimes people can be petty like that. It doesn't matter how big the business is, things can get petty. And, I have run into other people too who have done work for various companies, including the WWE, and not every relation, a lot of those gigs also kind of go similarly. I've heard some comparable stuff, but you're going to run into somebody who says, hey, I've been doing freelance work for them. It's the most greatest place in the world. Everyone's awesome. And I'm sure it is to them, and good for you. That's awesome. So just when you have these sort of weird experiences that get peppered around these amazing experiences, but it's like, what's kind of, and then you end up seeing a documentary comes out that, doesn't quite tell that whole story. You just kind of, it could be anything. And I've accepted that. It could be anything from, hey, we were here, like, hey, let's talk about the mat, and at that point, what the viewer at home doesn't know, of course, is that Taylor's been in there getting, they've all been doing these designs and masks and whatnot. So probably was already there. They've already were, before those cameras started rolling, there's something been brewing. So this was just part of that. And as they were, while we were at home or seeing a documentary, there's plenty of stuff going on behind the scenes, and they're gearing up for television stuff and everything else. Plans in place. It doesn't happen overnight. So it could have been any number of reasons why that documentary aired the way it did, or why they left it out, whether it be malicious, completely oblivious, and anything in between. Why? Doesn't matter now. It is what it is. But it's why I had that reaction at the time, and that's why it did kind of, bug me. And also to still want to answer your question real quick about what the purpose of that mask was. I had to diffuse. This is why I just kind of stay away from some of this sometimes. Because online, I had made mention in the past, and it's true, because it pertains to that mask, the company or somebody wanted Windam to bring the funhouse to life and have a stable, and they're all out there, just like they're doing now. And in wanting to do that, he pushed back. Windam, at the time, did not want just a bunch of random people. Not that they're using name performers, and it's become how they're doing that now. I find really interesting. You don't just bringing guys up from developmental and putting them under a mask, and that's their character. They already have their characters. We already know who Rowan is, and so forth. It is just like a character. It's more like shifts from face to heel or change or evolves a character. This is an evolution of those performers. Once they get in the ring, the mask comes off. They get to be themselves a bit more. What Bray didn't want was a bunch of whoever's. Just he's got a gaggle of like the puppets walking around with him. He didn't want that because that's not what it was. The funhouse was not a place to go. It's not a place to be. You're filming it. You're seeing inside his head. You're seeing in that headspace. You're seeing dimensional stuff at work here. Stuff that So it gets a little. And how do you convey that, right, on television naturally? How do you let to see this physical space, but the audience has to be able to somehow realize you're not seeing an actual real place. This is like a inside of the man's head kind of weird thing, which is why The Fiend and Bray Wyatt were separate characters and would show up together on TV to kind of invoke. And that was part of that narrative. That was getting people to understand, like, they're not the same. They're the same, right? But what's going on? So when Seth Rollins showed up in the funhouse, that bothered Bray. And I distinctly remember him getting on Twitter later that night or whatever, going, how did you find it and whatnot? He had to then similarly try to go, okay, now they made it a place where he showed up. Like, it's not that doesn't make sense for what I've already established to be the story. And then whatever else that I might even be aware of. But and I know I'm not aware of everything, but that's what I know about that, the funhouse. And then you got Seth coming in there that bothered him. So we had to try to constantly be on the heels of the creative decisions to try to guide it maybe back towards what he wanted to, was how it was always kind of worded. So that mask was the result of them saying, make the funhouse come to life. He said, well, I'll tell you what, counteroffered. To try to retain a better sense of it, how about I become all of the characters? And if you want to see them all together, make a little video package and do some editing and put them all together, just like they do with The Fiend and whatever already. But if the performer, if Abby, if Rabbit, if they're going to come out and wrestle or assume whatever the purpose is, it would always be Windam under a crazy evolved version of that puppet. Seeing that now. So that was the first one he wanted to go with. He said the first character I want to do is Huskus. He was going to wear a kind of Bane from Dark Knight Rises sort of coat. I think, matter of fact, I want to say, he goes, I got the exact same coat as Bane has, but it's all black. I think I'm going to wear that. He talked about taking that. So if you can imagine a big Bane from Batman black version of that coat, that mask, which was meant to be kind of like Leatherface. Different species of hog and pig were stitched together. The big mandible, just some big... He had this thing about always introducing as well, like these big hulking electronical, almost like biomechanical aspects of things, along with organic textures and this animal and scales from this fish and then from this, and then this creature's arm from this anime. You're like, and that's what I mean by trying to corral. So the pig mask was that. I remember him saying, I think I'm going to bring back the apron. He used to wear the apron gimmick, especially when he was in like FCW, maybe early NXT or something like that. I think he did it with Hardy a little bit too. He did. He had an apron that had like
His
almost
butcher
like
apron.
a Nightmare on Elm Street, like all the faces, like when Freddy Krueger had pulled up his sweater and all the faces were pushing through his nasty gut. That's what it reminded me of when I saw all those like leather facey faces on this apron. So he was going to do an apron gimmick with it too. And it was going to be him, but that was going to be Huskus. That was going to be the pig boy becoming that. And then we never designed any of the other ones because they shot it down or he pushed back. I don't know what, but he went, no, I don't want to do that. How about this? And then that project sort of went the wayside. But reasons that were never explained to me up until, again, he's like, hey, why did you share that drawing that I said I was going to share? He was apparently going to make it a mask. And I don't know if he was looking into working indies elsewhere outside of the WWE for a bit. He spoke about that, but nothing was ever concrete. He only ever spoke to maybe having phone calls and meetings with certain people. You know, did he have a conversation with a Tony Khan? Well, why wouldn't he? But I never believed then, even when he was telling me all this, I'm like, yeah, I'd be shocked if you go anywhere else but back to the company. Sure enough, but I always figured that's exactly where it'd work itself out. It just didn't, like other fans, and like you said, it didn't make any sense. It was stupid. It was confusing. Why would you give that up for a number of reasons? He's not only well loved, but he's also making you money. So whatever. But that was where they're going with that. So then now to see the what they're doing with the funhouse basically and all the characters. Someone had brought up that interview when I said that, and I felt like kind of tried to make a soundbite out of it. Like, oh, the mask designer says that what they're doing on TV is not what Windam wanted to do. And I was like, son of a bitch, you are twisting words. I can't, it drives me nuts. And it really, I had to try to stop that kind of silliness from being put out there because it's not true. You cannot connect what is happening on TV now to Windam. Now, and by that, I mean, short of anything that he would have ever shared with his brother or Jason or anything else that they might use. Well, what you're seeing now, of course, is a modification of something, but a unique concept to keep this thing going on. No one anticipates this happening. This sure shit wasn't a plan they had in the back pocket in anticipation of someone losing their life, for Christ's sake. So this is something new. I have no doubt that Jason and Taylor and anyone else in the company, for one, those people are probably going to know, I say probably, they're going to know more about this stuff than I ever will. So I'm not trying to pretend to be Captain Insider of information. I can only speak to what Windam said to me in regards to these situations. And that's how he felt then in 19, that he didn't want to have, maybe early 20, he didn't want to have a whole fun house of people just with him as a stable. What they're doing on the characters now, I don't think is that. I think it's something that's a little bit different, and which is why it's like, no, don't try to twist those things like I think what they're saying is wrong. I don't know either way. I don't know whose idea this was. I don't know what this is from. I'm not a part of that, so I'm not going to speak ill of something. I have no connection to that or what they're doing. So that was, but it could have been. I mean, that was at the time. If it was done his way at the time, it would have been him showing up, walking out there dressed like Ramblin' Rabbit, and I don't know what that would have been. People also incorrectly correlate some art pieces that I had shared with all that. And I would just, those are like that was me kind of doodling around, or I'd find inspirations of things. And, I felt I had to reach out and tell the one particular artist. I did a piece that I saw that he had made, and I did this thing. And I was just sharing like fun. I'm kind of forgetting at a point in time when you're drawing stuff. I realized that I can't just draw for fun anymore, because once a fan of the character knows that your art was used here, if I go to then draw another for fun Fiend related piece of artwork, every time, oh, what's this about? People think that I'm dropping some hint, and I'd be like, oh no, oh shit, that's not, like, I also don't want to say, oh no, it's not because I'm trolling anybody. It's weird, I'm not sure. It was like, well, okay, because they're taking television and they're taking this artwork and correlating things, and but if I go out and go, that's not what's happening, well, then I'm contributing to that narrative, and I might be wrong. I don't know, because I'm not designing something a part of that, but people would take it that way. We talk on the phone. I'd be like, damn, man. I go, sometimes I really get frustrated, because I stopped sharing that a lot. I stopped drawing Windam stuff, Bray Wyatt Fiend stuff, for a long time, just because I couldn't. Every time I share something, somebody would take it the wrong way. So then I started sharing the artwork I was doing for the video games. Well, what is that? It's a lot of creatures and nasty shit. And then you draw pictures like that, and then somebody's like, oh, and then all the podcasts and fans are tagging each other. Hey, what is it? I'm just over here like, it's not even for wrestling, guys. I don't even know what to tell you. So, that's just kind of the way it goes sometimes. But it's there's a lot of pieces we did that definitely that didn't get used, or he'd always kind of be in the front of. But that's what that pig mask was. That's why that design exists.
So I have a question, and I feel like maybe you can give me some insight on this, because you worked with Windam so closely. Is Abigail and Abby the Witch two different entities or one?
I don't know.
Damn it. I don't either. I was always under the impression they're two, because of how they're like, you hear Abigail and you hear Abby the Witch.
I'm trying to think of what. Wrestlers are still carnies, right?
Of course.
You're still getting. I work for Malachi Black, and that dude works us. You know what I mean? Like, when he didn't tell anybody he was going. We all found out he was showing up in the AEW ring that night, and I even, because we're all hitting, like, texting, like, dude, really? Because at this point, my one-on-one personal relationship with Tom became more connected than it even had been with Windam at times. Windam and I was like sections. Right. He would kind of, and he had that person, he kind of come out of the woodworks, and sometimes not. Windam goes, you can ask Jason, I'm terrible about getting back with people. I like disappear for a while before I show back up. He warned me of that when I met him. With Tom was more constant. We had so many like group meetings and video chats like this, and that you felt more like you just knew him a little bit more. So I knew him well enough. I wouldn't have done this with someone else, but at this point, we're sharing jokes and memes and, talking about, it's gone beyond the wrestling.
Yeah.
So as soon as I see him debut, I'm texting him like, you fuck, are you serious? Like, why didn't you tell me that you were going to be, he's like, I couldn't stop. I go, shut, dude, what do you think? Like, you're going to tell your t-shirt guys and we're going to get on the internet and ruin it for you? Like, so wrestlers work.
I love that.
People, and they don't stop. It's inherently ingrained in most of their DNA, I'm sure. That in mind, Windam was just as effective with that. And I distinctly remember, and it's the one thing, I genuinely felt some kind of way when he did this. I don't know if that just speaks to how good the TV character is there, and it's up there. And like, I'm sitting there, I'm tattooing him. His gal's right behind me. She's JoJo sitting there with baby Nash, who went everywhere with him when he was born, including tattoo shops.
I love that.
Yeah, he was cool too. He was a totally chill baby. He slept like the whole time. She was, of course, incredibly sweet and kind. But they're all there with us, doing this tattoo. And at some point in the conversation, we're talking about something with, what was he saying? I can't remember what he was going on about. Speaking to doing something with these characters or what have you, but he's talking about Sister Abigail. Now I'm thinking we're talking about the character. And I remember, I wish I could emulate it, but I would butcher it. So I'll just do my best to try to paint the picture. He was sitting there and he distracted himself when he brought up Sister Abigail. He genuinely drifted. And for like 3 seconds, I was mortified. It like when you talk like, you see, because I don't like, I'm watching him do this. We're talking, he's got a very kind of grovelly voice, and he's speaking at volume. He has a booming voice, and he has a loud, cackling, kind of high-pitched laugh, which we see that on the character. But his sort of regular dialogue, you'll see it a little bit in when the handful of times he does these interviews. But at that moment, he's talking. He's got a nice full voice, and then he starts talking about Sister Abigail, and his voice drops, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't know what I have to do with Sister Abigail," and I get, and he gets real low. And I remember I'm tattooing, and I'm looking at him because we're having a conversation, and he just kind of does one of these, and he drifts off, and he kind of stares for a while, and then he's like not talking to himself, but he's almost like making these sounds like under like rumbling. And I remember I stopped tattooing, and I was like, "What the hell are you doing?" Like, it was bizarre in like honestly pretty cool way. So, and then he never skipped a beat. He went right back into talking about whatever it was, and he never addressed it. Jeez. He never finished the thought. Sister Abigail got in the way, and so it's like, all right, dude, what we need to have a talk here. How much of this is beyond wrestling for you? Who is this person? What's this from? Everyone kind of knows now that Man in the Woods story that he told all those years ago.
It kind of brings it all to fruition.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, people are like, "Oh, he's such a creative genius." I'm like, yeah, trust me, I promise you, the man did not know he would ever be bringing that to life as a character on television. But the point is that he always has it at the ready. He's got when you create, and how expansive it is, I don't know, but he's already created a universe for this world.
Yeah. He's
already got things he can pull from. He has the universe that he can walk in and go, "There's a story, there's a story, there's a story." This isn't the story all the way out to the side. This is the story right here. So he can just pick from it. And where he's inspired by a lot of this stuff and what these things that have just been, because, Uncle Howdy as a name was his invention, and that means something to him. Now, the knowledge of what, I don't know, but I would assume Taylor, Jason possibly knows, and maybe for the fans of what they're doing now and this continuation of what Windam built, everyone will get to know what that is eventually. I hope that's the case. I hope that maybe they do properly expand on it, because if they are at all working off of anything that maybe he laid the groundwork for, well, again, no doubt Taylor's going to know a lot of what he always wanted to do. That if they're getting to really explore that, then to me, that's why when I got asked, like, how do you feel by them continuing this on without him? Is it just a money-making scheme? It's like, well, they're not going to do it if it doesn't make money, but it's an absolutely asshole thing to call it a money-making scheme at the same time. I firmly believe, at the very least, the people involved in the creation and the making of this, that in Taylor, whatever, Jason Still, Rob, Fee is another, loved Windam, and what they're doing is they're doing it because they care. They're passionate about who they're doing it for. So that's all that matters to me. You're honoring his legacy, barring any bad booking decisions, but that's just pro wrestling. Who cares? But as long as you're honoring his legacy with the characters that he created and the universe he built, why would I care?
Yeah,
again, you're a spoke on a wheel. Who cares what I have to say? I'm a part of this bigger machine, and I'm grateful to be a part of it, and I'm grateful to be right at the start of it. So that's the cool part about that. So there's, again, no hard feelings as far as that stuff goes, but it's but the Sister Abigail thing, I don't know if I would have had the guts to ask, and if he would not talk about it similarly to that. He would bring it up. He would talk about, something with Sister Abigail, but he would never expound on it. He talked more lengths about the other puppet. He never would go. So, and whether that's something truly traumatic from the guy's childhood. It's a real thing, all the way to complete bullshit. He's absolutely doing his job as a performer, even during a tattoo appointment, to a guy that's helping him, was part of designing this character. Would not surprise me. So either way is pretty, I'm cool with it. Whether it's real or not, I don't know. But I'm curious too. Maybe one day we'll all find out.
I always had that question. A lot of my listeners know that listened to my interview from season 1 that was done by my co-host on the other show, Will Gray, when he asked me. I'm a big Bray guy, like I told you. As far as to the point where my daughter is named Abigail because of him.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool.
She is named Abigail because Windam just, I don't know. I kept hearing Abigail, because watching his finisher over and over and over and being just, so I had to name her Abby.
Yeah.
And then when we had our youngest, I tried my damnedest, and this is Bray was still alive and with us at the time. I tried my damnedest to get her to go agree to Windam as a name, and it was just no. She's like, I know what you're doing. I get it that you're a big fan, but no. It was just no.
You got one.
I got one, and when she found out the real reason of why I suggested the name, she was pretty upset. But
you kept that. Well played.
I kept that to myself until later on. So
yeah, well, easier to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Right. You pretty much answered my last few questions there with the explanations. You obviously love, like you said, you're enjoying this new chapter of the Wyatt family, which is good. I'm not going to take anything you say out of context because we're talking here. But I'm going to wrap this up. But I want to ask you, because I've asked people this, and you being a fan, I know you said to me recently you've just kind of left Twitter. You're there, but you're not.
Yeah.
What is the biggest message you can send to the IWC? You're free to say anything you want here. Nothing will be taken. Well, I mean, it probably might, but not by me. But you can say what you need to say.
Yeah, sometimes I just wonder if it's when your generation becomes the older one, and it keeps ticking like that. Maybe that's just the way it is now. Maybe just that's the current fandom and whatnot. Maybe it speaks to a bigger issue, but just there's passionate and there's being a fan, and that's amazing. But I'd say if I could pick one thing as far as the current climate with online fans is we see it all the time, but people deny it, and then I see both. But I think it's kind of like algorithms. Since I don't participate in one of the tribalist bullshit kind of angles, none of that matters to me. I just you'll see a lot of people say it, I'm just like to be a fan of wrestling. If what you're showing me is cool, I'm going to tune in. If I'm not into it, I won't tune in. I have 2 options. I have 3 options. I have this company here. And you want to spend your days getting on a platform that you hate because you're convinced it's ran by an absolute monster. But you're on it anyway because you think your opinion matters so much. And you spend that time, I'm sorry, it is what it is. You're just absolute dick riding for a wrestling company. It's like people get on there and go ballistic for a politician. They don't like you. You don't mean anything to a politician, to bureaucrats. To get online and be that full of piss and vinegar and meanness, and to be so hostile. But at least in that field, you can go politics. We're talking about world events. A form of entertainment that doesn't hurt you to watch which one you watch. And then it seems like every time I'm on there, you can't see one thing get promoted without getting into the comments and then seeing the other guys trash it or make fun of it or insult it. And people go, well, this company's bad, that company's bad. It's actually those fans that are the worst. It's these trolls, it's all you. It's everybody's doing it. No company's worse at it than another. and I think I benefit because I don't participate in picking a side, as it were. I see it. So when somebody's like, no, it's this, I never see this. I only see them. Go to any post made on AEW's Instagram page. You're going to get these WWE fan bot type people just losing their minds and making fun of it. If you go to anything on the WWE stuff, you have people hating on that and going crazy. And I don't get that. Seems to be, for me, to answer your question, seems to be what sticks out to me the most is some of the most. We were talking earlier about, Miss Jody and her passing and whatnot. And I said then, she made it fun. She was passionate. She had her opinions. There was people and performers she didn't like, but she wasn't the type to get on social media and dog them and just run somebody down. If you're not having, stop watching if you're not having fun, man. Some people make it insufferable. They just don't make. So that's what sucks, I think. I hate that for young fans coming into it, because wrestling as a kid is a different thing, and it's so cool, so much fun to do all that, to go to those shows when you are, even if you're not, I grew up having in my ear like, that's so fake, right? Like, you know what I mean? But you're like, so what? You still as a kid cheered live in the audience. We're too cool to do that as adults sometimes. And you're going to go in and just, you're going to mold the generation of fans and just thinking they have to carry on like this or be an asshole to people. I just don't understand it. It's so awful. And I get the added bonus of knowing sometimes direct from the horse's mouth how some of that ignorant crap affects the performers themselves. Now, tough skin, you're a public figure, get over it, you make a lot of money, deal with it. Sure. They are. They're not the one telling you this right now. It's my opinion. Yeah, they're going to have their thick skin. And no one's saying let's all, coddle each other's feelings here and be sweetsy and, you can't have an opinion. I'm not saying that. I'm speaking to what seems to be, do you even really think the stuff that you're saying? Or do you feel like you have to pick a team? Are you doing it because you really feel that way, or because you want the clout of the likes? Because more than ever, people are so driven by the online response. Some of us do it because we have to. It's our job. I need to see numbers happen. I want to see that because that's literally how I'm feeding my family. I'm using social media to share the work that I do. But that's it. But I don't use social media to get on to tear down someone else's business. I don't use social media to get on to try to hurt someone else, no matter how good of a reason that person might have ever given me. That's dumb. I can be guilty of that in my past life, being an immature kid and all that stuff, no doubt. But at some point, you got to kind of grow up and get away from that stuff. And to see it to this level now, it just gets nasty with people online. So it's like just, yeah, I'm not trying to boo-hoo about it and, or cry, and the wrestlers are going to make it. People are going to make it just fine. Most of them could give a shit. A lot of people, like, they could care less about what's said about it, but people take not only the fandom of pro wrestling and their opinions of a character. If it's in character, I can't stand his character. I hope that guy loses. I hate them, whatever. Fine. That's just being a fan in a business where the whole kind of purpose is to play it off like it's real. Even to a degree, even amongst fans to a point. Like, like if you're with your friends and you guys are joking around, you almost get into, to use the word again, but that kayfabe kind of fan argument. You're almost talking with your friends as if what you're seeing is real, and you're debating who's going to win because of their performance in that other match, that sporting contest they were in. You have fun. It's fun. It's supposed to be fun. It's a circus sideshow, for Christ's sake. Have fun with it. Stop being such a prick. So that's the hard part it is to endure sometimes from that level of fandom. And again, it does. Sometimes fans have gotten really personal, and I'll speak to this one because I might be stepping outside the line by saying it, but I think it's worth saying. I remember when, like with 9/11, and a lot of fans know this, but for those that don't, Tom Malachi Black, wife, Zelina Vega, and she has put this out. She has spoken at events about this. I'm not putting any personal business out there when I say this. She unfortunately lost her father on 9/11. He was in one of those towers and lost his life. And what's really fucked is it was shared with me because it really upset, people, as you can imagine, that fans would attack her to use it as that's her dad isn't part of the show, idiot. You don't go online and make fun of a performer, almost like you're doing it as you don't like the character, and then you bring up the fact that I saw it with my own eyes because it was shared with me through someone had made a point to say, something really, I'm not going to say what it was, but someone made a really nasty comment about her and her family and alluded to perhaps it was deserved because her evil cult leader wrestling character husband was a devil worshipping piece of shit. And that was one, again, not to overshare some, but that bothers me. It bothers me enough that I'm sorry. I feel like it has to be said. For you, if you ever think that I want to get online, attack someone's personal life because you don't like their wrestling character, and then you drag someone else, and then you bring in your own personal stupid, misguided opinions that you think someone's being punished from the almighty over a wrestling. I've seen that more than a few times, and that's pretty extreme stuff here. But unfortunately, it seems to bleed out from this notion of going too hostile to each other. So that's just that's what I see it, because you follow a thread online, you see people getting into it, and next thing you know, some pretty heinous stuff's going down, and it's just like, this isn't fun jaw-jacking. This isn't fun bullshitting and shit-talking and bantering. This is like mean. It's not fun. My opinion.
Scott, sorry. It's like most recently, because you're bringing up Zelina. The thing that bothered me the most, other than this Zelina thing recently, I think it was a couple months back now, where JoJo was out having fun.
Yep. Exactly.
And the amount of people attacking her, it really disheartened me to see that. Yeah. Because 100% we all understand, like, I don't understand, maybe you don't understand, but from her perspective, she's grieving, yes, but she still does deserve a life. And Windam, from my understanding and from stories I've heard, probably wouldn't want her to sit at home and crying all the time.
I mean, think about that. The fact that you think, not you, but the general, whoever who was doing this, to think that you have a right to say shit about how someone else is grieving the loss of the father of their children and someone they basically just started their life with. And most importantly here, someone who genuinely loved you and you love them. That takes, when people say that takes it takes a level of, that's some kind of evil there. That's some kind of sick, sadistic. There's something there that, I don't know how else the way to slice it. You're a piece of shit. You don't, to think and twist that as somehow how that person's coping and what they went through, and the ability just to put on a smile, much less an outfit, and to get out there and try to live a life. That poor woman was absolutely I believe, distracting herself from what is otherwise a non-stop horror movie playing on in her heart and in her head. Children coming up and saying, "Where's Dad?" Children too young to know what's going on. To hell with you if you think that you can critique this woman for going out one time with other women who are there for her to prop her up, to give her a good time, to take her mind off it a bit. That's mental health. That's trying to take care of your headspace and not lose your shit. You want to make fun of someone like that who's going through that? A mother? Go fuck yourself. I will. There's no other way to word it. I'm sorry.
No, there isn't. You're fine. I've gone to bat several times for that, and it disgusted me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to have you on for another part, man. There's lots more that we can uncover, and when you have the time, by any means, you let me know, and we'll chat. But at this point, I want you to go ahead and tell people where I don't think you do a lot of online posting anymore, because I'm seeing that kind of dwindle down. But tell people where they can find you, and if they want to commission you, how to get a hold of you. But they have to literally pay you. Let's make that clear, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
You're here to pay him for his art.
I keep it pretty simple. I don't. I primarily kind of operate and to put my stuff out there through Instagram. at Scarborough Studio. I believe I have a period after the Scarborough and their Scarborough dot studio. Email has always been the same. It's just all one word, Scarborough Tattoo at Gmail. And I use that primarily for, especially with, tattooing consultations and whatnot. But, social media, mostly Instagram, I sort of work through, and any of the inboxes. I have the Facebook, and I do still have my, what do we call it now?
I still call it Twitter.
Yeah, I still got my Twitter thing, and Twitter, really, I never use Twitter much in the way of my work. I would share, tattoos every now and again, but I really just used it to interact with the fans, and without doing a whole lot with wrestling these days, besides some stuff for like Vincent and the Righteous. And there was something else that we also worked on with those guys in AEW for anyone who's a fan. That was pretty fun, but I haven't had any updates if we're going to continue on with this thing. Did a design for the Gates of Agony, Bishop Khan, and Loa and AEW as well, plus some kind of fun design stuff for a new character for Bishop. So, I still get to, when performers reach out, want to work with, it's fun. I still love doing it for, I guess, pick a side reasons. The WWE doesn't seem too keen on wanting to use that stuff anymore, but man, I got to do Prince of the Undertaker, and as a lifelong fan of him since I was a kid, I got nothing bad to say about the company or anybody. That was great. So Twitter's still going. What's my Twitter? Oh, Scarborough TWTC on Twitter. That was my previous shop name, the Washington Tattoo Collector there. So I wish I was better at marketing, so I had a completely uniform name for all my socials, but I don't. So to answer your question, primarily Instagram, Scarborough.studio is the @ And all you got to do is hit me up and ask any questions. I'm more than happy to work with anybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, make sure if you're in Washington, Missouri, correct?
Yes, sir.
Give him a heads up a few months out that you're coming and maybe get a tattoo by the man. He works hard to provide for his family. He gave me 2 hours of his time tonight, and I appreciate that. I look forward to more conversations with you in the future.
Anytime, man. Happy to do it. I appreciate your time.
With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I am Shadow. This is Kyle. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Spotlight with Shadow.